The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. For millennia, the Jedi have taught that the Force guides the fate of stars and civilizations alike. But what happens when something arrives that the Force never accounted for? Something forged not by mystical energy, but by human genius, determination, and a glowing core of pure technological power. The Battle of Christophsis raged across crystalline canyons and transparent towers, a brutal stalemate between the Grand Army of the Republic and the separatist droid legions. Clone troopers in white armor exchanged blaster fire with endless waves of B-1 battle droids, while AT-TE walkers lumbered through streets littered with shattered glass and scorched metal. Overhead, Republic gunships dueled with separatist vulture droids, their engines screaming through smoke-choked air. Then the sky tore open. It wasn't a hyperspace signature, it wasn't a ship, it was a rift, a crackling wound in reality itself that blazed with colors no scanner could identify. The rift pulsed once, twice, then expelled something small and golden red that tumbled through the atmosphere, trailing fire and electromagnetic static. Inside the Mark 50 armor, Tony Stark's world was chaos. "J.A.R.V.I.S, status report," he shouted over alarm screaming in his helmet display. "Sir, spatial displacement event has concluded," the AI responded with characteristic calm despite the circumstances. "However, I'm unable to establish communication with any Stark Industries satellites, shield networks, or even standard Earth orbital infrastructure." In fact, sir, I'm detecting no familiar stellar configurations whatsoever. The ground rushed up at terminal velocity. Tony fired reverse thrusters at full power, the repulsors screaming as they fought against Christophsis' gravity. He pulled up 50 feet from impact, sending a shockwave of displaced air across the battlefield that knocked battle droids off their feet. "Okay, that's not New York," Tony muttered, rotating midair to take in his surroundings. Crystalline buildings stretched toward unfamiliar stars. Below, what looked like identical soldiers in white armor were shooting at, were those robots? "J.A.R.V.I.S, please tell me we're in some kind of elaborate theme park." "I'm afraid not, sir. Scanning local electromagnetic spectrum now. I'm detecting weapons fire using plasma-based technology, repulsor lift generators, and, sir, there appears to be a massive battle occurring directly beneath us." A blaster bolt sizzled past Tony's head, close enough that his HUD registered the heat signature. He spun, targeting systems acquiring the source, a floating tank with blue markings that was rotating its cannons toward him. "Hostile detected," J.A.R.V.I.S announced unnecessarily. "Yeah, I got that." Tony raised both palms and fired. Twin repulsor beams struck the AAT tank dead center, the impact tearing through its armor plating and detonating its power core in a spectacular fireball. "Okay, so repulsors work? That's good news." More targeting indicators flooded his HUD as dozens of battle droids turned their attention from the clone troopers to this new aerial threat. Blaster bolts filled the air like deadly confetti, converging on his position from multiple vectors. Tony's response was immediate and brutal. He dove into a barrel roll, micro-missiles launching from his shoulders and seeking the largest concentrations of enemy fire. Explosions blossomed across the battlefield as the missiles found their marks, scattering droids like toys. He banked hard left, firing repulsors at a squad of super battle droids, then boosted straight up as a separatist fighter screamed past where he'd been hovering. J.A.R.V.I.S. tactical analysis. Who are we shooting at? Based on observable patterns, sir, there appear to be three distinct groups. The soldiers in white armor are defending this position against the robotic forces. The robots themselves seem to be the aggressors, and you, sir, are apparently shooting at everyone. A clone trooper's voice crackled across an open comm channel that J.A.R.V.I.S. had intercepted. Unknown contact. This is Captain Rex of the 501st Legion. Identify yourself, or we will engage. Tony pulled up next to a crystalline tower, hovering at eye level with a platform where several clone troopers had taken cover. They aimed their blasters at him with professional precision, but hadn't fired yet. Behind them, more clones were dragging wounded comrades to safety, while a massive walking tank provided covering fire. Through his faceplate, Tony could see these weren't robots. They were living people. Identical living people, but people nonetheless. And they were bleeding. Iron Man, Tony responded, broadcasting on the same frequency. Avenger, genius, billionaire, philanthropist, and extremely confused. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess the robots are the bad guys? The separatist droids? Yes, sir, Rex confirmed, lowering his weapon slightly. Are you with the Republic? Tony watched as a cluster of battle droids organized for another push on the clone position. Behind them, larger droids with 4 arms and shields were advancing methodically. Whatever this Republic was, the guys in white armor were outnumbered at least 10-1. Sure, Tony said. Let's go with that. He launched forward, accelerating to Mach 2 in 3 seconds. The sonic boom shattered already damaged crystals as he crashed into the droid formation like a golden meteor. Repulsors fired at point-blank range, ripping droids apart. His armor's nanotech flowed into blade configurations, slicing through metal as he spun through the enemy ranks. Within 15 seconds, 50 droids were smoking scrap. Tony landed in the center of the carnage, surveying the destruction. J.A.R.V.I.S., I don't suppose you figured out where the hell we are. I have bad news and worse news, sir. Hit me. The bad news is that I've analyzed stellar positioning, atmospheric composition, and gravitational constants. We are definitively no longer in our home universe. Tony's jaw tightened. And the worst news? I'm detecting a massive energy signature approaching from orbit. Multiple capital-class vessels. Based on their trajectory and the panic in local communications, I believe the losing side is about to receive reinforcements. Tony looked up. Through Christophas's crystalline atmosphere, he could see massive triangular shapes descending through the clouds. Ships that made shield helicarriers look like toys. Well, Tony said, at least things can't get any weirder. That's when he felt it, a presence approaching from behind that didn't register on any of his sensors. He spun, repulsors charging, and found himself face to face with 2 figures who had just leapt 40 feet straight up to land on the destroyed tank wreckage beside him. One was bearded and wore earth-toned robes. The other was younger, with a scar across one eye and a mechanical hand. Both carried weapons that Tony's sensors identified as concentrated plasma contained in magnetic field, lightsabers. And both were staring at him with expressions that mixed wonder, suspicion, and something else Tony couldn't quite identify. Fascinating, the bearded one said, his accent crisp and distinctly British. Anakin, do you sense anything from him? The younger one, Anakin, frowned, his blue eyes intense. Nothing. It's like he's not even there. No force presence at all. That's because I'm not from around here, Tony said carefully, keeping his hands visible but his repulsors charged. Tony Stark, and you are? The bearded man smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jedi Knight. This is Anakin Skywalker, and I think, Mr. Stark, that you and I need to have a very long conversation about how you arrived on this planet. Behind them, the massive Republic ships continued their descent, and somewhere in the ruins of Christophsis, battle droids were already regrouping for another assault. Tony Stark had saved his world a dozen times, had fought aliens and gods and his own demons. But here, in a galaxy far, far away, surrounded by clone soldiers and mystical warriors with laser swords, he was about to learn that some battles transcend everything. He thought he knew about power, destiny, and what it means to be a hero. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Republic's Resolute hung in orbit above Christophsis like a dagger poised to strike. Its hangar bay a controlled storm of activity as gunships deposited troops and supplies. Tony Stark walked through the cavernous space with Obi-Wan and Anakin flanking him, his armor's sensors drinking in every detail of this impossible place. Clone troopers jogged past in perfect formation, their armor bearing unit designations and battle scars that made each theoretically identical soldier somehow unique. Astromech droids rolled between starfighters that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd never heard of aerodynamics, but somehow made them work anyway. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, was technology that made Tony's engineering mind itch with questions. "J.A.R.V.I.S, are you getting this?" Tony muttered sub-vocally. "Every bite, sir. Though I must note that local computer systems operate on principles I'm still attempting to decode. Their computational architecture is remarkably efficient, despite appearing primitive by our standards." Define our standards when we're not even in our universe anymore. A philosophical question for another time, sir. We're approaching what appears to be a conference room. The Jedi led him into a chamber dominated by a circular holographic projector. Within seconds, blue-tinted figures flickered to life around the table, 12 of them, all wearing similar robes, all radiating an authority that Tony recognized from too many military briefings. "Members of the Council," Obi-Wan began, bowing slightly. "Allow me to introduce—" "Tony Stark," Tony interrupted, retracting his faceplate so they could see his face. No point hiding when they'd probably just force-read his mind or whatever mystical nonsense they did. "I'd say it's a pleasure, but I'm still processing the whole different galaxy thing." A small green creature, definitely not human, definitely ancient, leaned forward on his hover chair. "Process you must, Mr. Stark, but first, explain you will how you came to be on Christophsis, and why in the Force you cannot be felt." Tony raised an eyebrow. "You must be Yoda. J.A.R.V.I.S pulled your name from local comm chatter, and I can't be felt because where I'm from, the Force isn't a thing. We have science instead." "Science and the Force are not mutually exclusive," a dark-skinned man with a stern expression interjected. "Mace Windu," Tony's HUD helpfully identified through facial recognition, cross-referenced with intercepted communications. "But your technology is unlike anything in Republic records. That armor alone represents a quantum leap in miniaturization and power generation." "Thanks, I built it myself." Tony walked around the holographic table, his armor's scanners analyzing the projection technology. Nice setup you've got here. Hollow communications across light years with no apparent lag. That violates causality 6 ways from Sunday, but I'll add it to the list of impossible things I've seen today. Mr. Stark, Obi-Wan said carefully, we need to understand what brought you here. You appeared through some kind of spatial anomaly during the middle of a battle. Was this intentional? Tony's expression darkened. No, I was in the middle of dealing with an alien invasion on Earth. That's my home planet. When an experimental technology malfunctioned. 1 second I'm fighting killer robots from space. Next second I'm fighting different killer robots in a completely different space. He paused, though I'm noticing a pattern with the robots. The separatist droid army, Anakin explained. They're trying to break away from the Republic. It's a civil war. A civil war with clone soldiers and robots. Tony studied the young Jedi. That's efficient, dehumanizing, but efficient. Nobody has to mourn when a droid dies. The clones are not droids, Anakin said sharply. They're soldiers, brothers. Tony held up his hands. No offense intended. I've got friends who are AIs. Personhood isn't limited to natural birth. He turned back to Yoda. Look, I didn't ask to be here, but now that I am, I've got 2 priorities. 1, survive. 2, find a way home. If helping you fight your robot war accomplishes priority 1, I'm willing to negotiate. Negotiate? Mace Windu's tone carried warning. The Republic doesn't negotiate with unknown entities who possess weapons technology that could shift the entire balance of power. Then it's a good thing I'm not asking permission. Tony's faceplate snapped back into place, the gesture unmistakably defensive. I'm offering cooperation. There's a difference. The holographic chamber fell silent except for the hum of the projectors. Tony could see the Jedi exchanging glances, probably having some telepathic conversation about whether to trust him or lock him up. He'd been through enough SHIELD debriefings to recognize the pattern. It was Yoda who broke the silence. Felt in the Force you cannot be, Mr. Stark, but your presence, felt it is nonetheless. Arrived you have at a dangerous time. War consumes the galaxy, and mysteries we have enough of already. Join the club, Tony shot back. You think this is easy for me? I'm a man of science stuck in a galaxy that runs on space magic. Every sensor reading I get violates physics as I understand it, but I'm adaptable. It's kind of my thing. A female Jedi with twin head tails spoke up. Master Yoda, perhaps we should consider the tactical advantage Mr. Stark represents. His intervention on Christophsis destroyed an entire separatist column single-handedly. And there's the offer, Tony said. I've got a suit of armor that apparently works just fine in your universe. I've got an AI that can crack your computer systems like they're written in crayon. And I've got a particular set of skills that seem pretty useful against droid armies. He paused for effect. But I'm not joining anybody's army. I'm a consultant at best. The Council must deliberate, Mace Windu said firmly. Obi-Wan, Anakin, escort Mr. Stark to secure quarters. Do not let him access any Republic systems until we've made our decision. Secure quarters, Tony laughed without humor. That's a nice way of saying sell. Let me save you the trouble of pretending otherwise. It's a precaution, Obi-Wan said diplomatically. Surely you understand our position. An unknown individual with advanced technology appears in the middle of a war zone. We need to verify your intentions. Tony wanted to argue, but the rational part of his mind, the part that had built Stark Industries into a weapons manufacturing empire, before having a crisis of conscience, understood their logic. If someone in an indestructible suit of armor had appeared in Manhattan claiming to be from another dimension, S.H.I.E.L.D. would have done the same thing. "Fine," he said, "but I want workshop access. Give me tools and materials and I'll show you I'm serious about helping. I'll even upgrade some of your equipment as a gesture of good faith." Upgrade Republic military technology? Mace Windu's hologram shook its head. Absolutely not. Not military tech, Tony countered quickly. Medical equipment, life support systems, things that save lives instead of taking them. Unless your bureaucracy is so paranoid, you won't even let me help your wounded soldiers. That hit home. Tony saw several council members exchange uncomfortable glances. Wars were fought with weapons, but they were won by logistics, morale, and keeping your soldiers alive. If this armored stranger could improve their medical technology with no access to weapon systems. "We will consider it," Yoda said finally. "For now, patience you must have, and trust you must earn." The holograms flickered out, leaving Tony alone with Obi-Wan and Anakin in the suddenly quiet chamber. "That went well," Tony said dryly. Anakin actually cracked a smile. "You could have been more diplomatic." Diplomacy is for people who can't build a better argument or a better armor. Tony retracted his faceplate again, meeting Anakin's eyes. "Look, I get it. You don't trust me. I wouldn't trust me either. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere until I figure out how to get home. And the enemy of my enemy is at least someone I can tolerate sharing a space station with." "She's a ship, not a station," Obi-Wan corrected absently. "And for what it's worth, Mr. Stark, I believe you. The Force may not touch you, but I've learned to trust my instincts about people. You're arrogant, defensive, and clearly used to being the smartest person in any room." "I like him already," Anakin muttered to Obi-Wan. "But," Obi-Wan continued, "you also threw yourself into combat to protect clone troopers you'd never met. That speaks to character." He gestured toward the door. "Come, your secure quarters have a viewport, at least. You should see what a galaxy at war looks like from orbit." Tony followed them out, his mind already racing with possibilities. He was trapped in another universe with no clear way home, surrounded by warrior monks who wielded laser swords and talked about mystical energy fields. His armor worked, his weapons worked, and J.A.R.V.I.S was already probing the Republic's computer networks, despite the prohibition. But more than that, Tony Stark recognized opportunity when he saw it. These people needed technology. He needed resources and information. And somewhere in this galaxy, there had to be someone smart enough to help him understand the physics of what brought him here. "J.A.R.V.I.S," he sub-vocalized as they walked through corridors filled with bustling personnel. "Start mapping everything. Ship schematics, power systems, communications protocols. If we're stuck here, we're going to need leverage." "Already underway, sir. Though I should note that I've detected multiple encrypted communications mentioning your arrival, not all from Republic sources." "Meaning?" "Meaning, sir, that the Separatists know you're here, and they're very interested in acquiring your technology." Tony's jaw tightened. Of course they were. In any war, a weapon that could turn the tide was worth any price. And right now, he was that weapon, whether he liked it or not. The viewport in Tony's quarters offered a view that would have made NASA weep with envy. Christophsis hung below like a fractured jewel, its crystalline surface reflecting the light of its sun in prismatic cascades. Beyond it, stars stretched in unfamiliar constellations, and the massive wedge shapes of Republic star destroyers maintained their blockade positions with military precision. Tony stood at the transparisteel, his armor retracted into its compact housing unit, wearing the simple undershirt and pants that J.A.R.V.I.S had fabricated from the suit's nanotech. His arc reactor glowed steadily through the fabric, casting blue light across the dim room. "Sir, I've completed my preliminary analysis of Republic computer systems," J.A.R.V.I.S reported through the room's audio system. "The encryption is surprisingly sophisticated, but operating on principles that are somewhat antiquated by our standards. Like giving a medieval army smartphones," Tony mused. "Advanced technology, but no understanding of the underlying principles that could make it better." "Precisely. However, I've discovered something concerning. There are 17 separate communications regarding your arrival, sir. 3 from Republic High Command, 6 from various Jedi, and 8 from sources I cannot trace. Heavily encrypted and routed through what appear to be black market relay stations." Tony turned from the viewport. "The Separatists?" "Some, certainly, but others." J.A.R.V.I.S paused, which for an AI meant genuine uncertainty. "Sir, the encryption patterns suggest multiple interested parties. This galaxy's underworld appears to be just as interested in you as its military forces." "Fantastic. I'm a prize to be won." Tony began pacing, his mind working through scenarios. "What about our power situation?" "The arc reactor is functioning at 98% efficiency. Whatever physical laws govern this universe, they're compatible with our technology. In fact, sir, I'm detecting some intriguing energy signatures that might explain why." "Explain." "This force they keep mentioning appears to have measurable quantum effects. I'm detecting field fluctuations that interact with electromagnetic radiation in ways that shouldn't be possible according to standard physics. It's as if this universe has an additional fundamental force, literally, that mediates certain impossible interactions." Tony stopped pacing. "You're saying the force is real?" "I'm saying there's a measurable energy field permeating this galaxy that has properties unlike anything in our home universe. Whether it's mystical or simply physics we don't understand yet is open for interpretation." Before Tony could respond, the door hissed open. He spun, ready to summon his armor with a thought, but relaxed marginally when he saw it was Anakin. Alone this time, and carrying what looked like a data pad. "Relax, Stark. I'm not here to arrest you." Anakin stepped inside, the door closing behind him. "Though maybe I should be. J.A.R.V.I.S, that's your AI, right? Has been probing our systems for the last hour." Tony didn't even try to deny it. "Can you blame me? I'm stuck in an alien galaxy with no way home and surrounded by people who haven't decided if I'm an asset or a threat." "Fair point." Anakin tossed him the datapad. "The Council is still deliberating, but I thought you should see this. We intercepted Separatist communications about you." Tony caught the pad and scrolled through the translated text. His expression darkened with each line. "They want to capture me, take apart my armor, reverse engineer the arc reactor." He looked up. "How badly?" "Badly enough that Count Dooku himself has issued orders. Your priority 1, above even capturing Republic senators." Anakin leaned against the wall, his mechanical hand flexing unconsciously. "You really shook them up on Christophsis. 50 droids destroyed in under a minute, and you barely registered on their threat assessment systems before you attacked." "That's because I don't show up on Force radar," Tony said, "which I'm guessing makes me either invisible or terrifying to people who rely on space magic for tactical information." The Force isn't magic, Anakin said, but without heat. It's life, energy. It binds the galaxy together. And yeah, not being able to sense you is unsettling. It's like you're a void where a person should be. Flattering. Tony set down the pad and crossed his arms. So what's your read, Skywalker? Am I a prisoner or an ally? Anakin studied him for a long moment. Obi-Wan thinks you're genuine. Says your body language is all defensive arrogance masking actual fear, which means you're rational enough to be scared but proud enough to hide it. He smiled slightly. I think he's been analyzing senators too long. And what do you think? I think you threw yourself into combat to save clone troopers without even knowing what side you were on. That's either stupidity or genuine heroism. Anakin pushed off the wall. I'm hoping it's the second one because the Republic needs heroes right now. We're losing this war, Stark. Slowly, but we're losing. Tony absorbed that. You've got clone armies, Jedi warriors with laser swords and ships that make aircraft carriers look like bathtub toys. How are you losing? Because the Separatists have more droids than we have soldiers, more resources than the Republic can marshal, and leadership that's willing to do whatever it takes to win. Anakin's voice carried frustration born from 2 years of brutal warfare. Every battle we win costs us troops we can't replace. Every planet we lose is one more system that falls to their control. And the Senate, he shook his head. Politics, bureaucracy. By the time they approve a military action, the opportunity's already passed. Sounds familiar, Tony muttered, thinking of the World Security Council and their endless red tape. So where do I fit into this losing war? That's what the Council is debating. Some want to study your technology. Others want to lock you up until they can verify you're not a separatist trick. And a few, like Master Windu, think you're too dangerous to trust regardless of your intentions. And you? Anakin grinned, and for a moment he looked younger than his years. I think you're exactly the kind of unpredictable variable this war needs. The Sith. He paused, seeming to reconsider his words. The Separatist leadership thrives on predictability. They know how the Jedi fight. They know Republic tactics. But you're something new. The Sith, Tony repeated, catching the slip. That's not the first time I've heard that term. What's a Sith? Anakin's expression shuddered. Ancient enemies of the Jedi, thought to be extinct for a millennium, but he shook his head. Doesn't matter. Focus on the Separatists. They're the immediate threat. Tony's danger sense, honed by years of corporate espionage and superhero combat, pinged hard. Anakin was lying, or at least omitting critical information, but pushing now would only close doors he needed kept open. All right, Tony said. Let's say I believe the Republic is the lesser evil here. What do you need from me? Besides your armor and reactor technology? Anakin laughed. How about your engineering expertise? You said you wanted to work on medical tech. The 501st has a field hospital that could use upgraded equipment. Show the Council you're serious about helping, and they'll come around. Smart. Give me limited access to prove myself before granting me the keys to the kingdom. Tony nodded slowly. I can work with that, but I need tools, materials, and access to your medical databases. And Anakin, I work alone. No engineers watching over my shoulder, no military liaisons assisting me. You don't trust easily. I trusted the wrong people once, built weapons that killed innocents, Swore I'd never let anyone weaponize my technology again. Tony's hand unconsciously touched his arc reactor. So yeah, I work alone. Non-negotiable. Anakin considered this, then nodded. I'll talk to Obi-Wan. He can convince the Council. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Stark. You asked how we're losing this war. It's not just numbers or resources. It's that the Separatists always seem to know our moves before we make them, like someone's feeding them intelligence from inside the Republic. You have a spy problem. We have a trust problem, and right now you're an unknown quantity who appeared out of nowhere with technology nobody understands. Anakin met his eyes. Prove you're worth trusting. The Republic needs people who can think outside the box. The Jedi Council needs to remember that not every solution requires the Force. The door hissed open and Anakin left, leaving Tony alone with his thoughts and J.A.R.V.I.'s quiet presence. J.A.R.V.I.S, analysis, is he playing me? Uncertain, sir. However, his physiological responses suggest genuine frustration with military and political constraints. The comment about a spy was particularly telling. He believes it but can't prove it, which makes him either paranoid or right. Tony returned to the viewport, watching Republic patrol ships make their rounds. And that comment about the Sith, he knows something the Council doesn't want discussed. A secret enemy pulling strings from behind the scenes. It would explain the strategic intelligence advantage he mentioned. It would also mean this war is more complicated than Republic versus Separatists. Tony's mind was already racing ahead, connecting dots with insufficient data, but a lifetime of experience recognizing patterns. Two sides fighting, both potentially being manipulated by a third. Classic divide and conquer. Speculation without evidence, sir. Evidence follows questions, J.A.R.V.I.S, and I've got a lot of questions. Tony turned from the viewport, decision made. We play along, build their medical tech, prove we're useful, gain access to their systems, and while we're at it, sir, start building me a workshop, somewhere they don't know about. I want a backup plan in case this alliance goes south. Paranoid, sir? Prepared. Tony smiled grimly. In a galaxy where warrior monks with laser swords can read minds and an ancient enemy might be manipulating a galactic civil war, paranoia is just good sense. Outside, the stars wheeled in unfamiliar patterns, and somewhere in the vastness of space, forces Tony didn't yet understand were beginning to take notice of the man who couldn't be sensed by the Force. Count Dooku stood in his holographic chamber aboard the Invisible Hand, studying the tactical data with aristocratic precision. Beside him, the massive form of General Grievous loomed, mechanical breathing filling the silence. This armored warrior, Dooku mused. He destroyed an entire battalion with contemptuous ease, yet the Jedi say they cannot sense him through the Force. Then he is vulnerable, Grievous rasped. Without the Force, he is merely a man in a machine. I will take his head and claim his armor as a trophy. Perhaps. Dooku's expression remained neutral, but his mind raced with possibilities. A technology that operated independently of the Force, immune to Jedi precognition, undetectable to Force sensing. Lord Sidious would want this prize, but first we must separate him from Republic protection. He is on the Resolute, surrounded by Jedi and clone troopers. Then we will bring the battle to him, Grievous said. Lure him out, make him fight. Indeed. Dooku smiled coldly. Prepare the fleet, General. We're going to make Mr. Stark an offer he cannot refuse. The medical bay of the Resolute smelled like bacta and ozone, a combination that reminded Tony uncomfortably of his own time spent in recovery after Afghanistan. Clone troopers in various states of injury occupied the beds, some missing limbs, others wrapped in bacta patches that hissed as they dispensed healing compounds. A medical droid moved between them with mechanical efficiency, but Tony could see the strain on the organic staff, the exhaustion in their movements. "This is Kix," Anakin said, gesturing to a clone medic who approached with cautious curiosity. "Best field medic in the 501st. Kix, this is Tony Stark. He's offered to upgrade our medical equipment." Kix studied Tony with the same face Tony had seen on dozens of other clones, but the intelligence behind those eyes was unique. "With respect, sir, our equipment is Republic standard, certified by the Medical Corps and battle-tested across hundreds of campaigns. And still losing patients who shouldn't die," Tony said bluntly, gesturing to a biomonitor that was beeping irregularly. "That trooper over there, what's his status?" "Hard case, took shrapnel from a separatist artillery shell. Internal bleeding, but stable." Tony walked to the monitor, J.A.R.V.I.S already analyzing the readouts through his arc reactor's subtle sensor network. Stable is relative. His blood pressure's dropping, which means the bleeding isn't stopped, just slowed. Your scanner is reading major vessels, but missing the smaller lacerations. You need better resolution, real-time imaging, and predictive algorithms that can flag deterioration before it becomes critical. Kix's skepticism wavered. "You can tell all that from looking at the monitor?" "I can tell all that because I built medical tech for Stark Industries that saved lives when doctors couldn't." Tony turned to face the medic directly. "I'm not here to criticize your work. You're doing the best you can with what you have. But what you have is 50 years behind where it could be." "Bold claim," Kix said, but there was interest now, not just defensiveness. Tony smiled slightly. "Give me 6 hours and access to your fabrication equipment. I'll prove it." The workshop space they'd cleared for him was barely worthy of the name. A converted storage bay with basic tools and a Republic fabricator that looked like it had been designed by committee. But Tony had started with less in an Afghan cave. And at least here he had J.A.R.V.I.S and power tools that didn't run on car batteries. "All right, Jay, let's see what we can build with their toys." Tony pulled up holographic schematics, his hands moving through the blue-tinted displays with practiced ease. "Medical scanner, upgraded. We need better penetration, higher resolution, and processing power that can handle real-time analysis." "Sir, their fabricators operate on different principles than our nanotech. The resolution is approximately 30% lower, and the material options are limited." "Then we adapt." Tony began modifying the design, stripping out elements that required Earth-specific materials and substituting with what J.A.R.V.I.S had cataloged from Republic technology databases. They've got Durasteel, Plasteel, and something called Transparasteel. No titanium alloys, no carbon nanotubes, but their energy-to-matter conversion is actually more efficient than anything we had. Compensating for material limitations with power efficiency. Elegant, sir. Necessity is the mother of invention. Tony's fingers flew across the holographic interface, merging Earth engineering principles with Star Wars material science. The resulting design was hybrid, recognizably Stark technology but built from an alien galaxy's components. There, Medical Scanner Mark I Star Wars Edition. Let's see if this works. The fabricator hummed to life, energy fields coalescing into solid matter, layer by layer. Tony watched with the satisfaction of a sculptor seeing his vision take form. The scanner emerged 15 minutes later, sleeker than the Republic standard, with an arc reactor-inspired power core that would run for months without recharging. J.A.R.V.I.S, run diagnostics. All systems operational, sir. Power efficiency exceeds projections by 12%. The scanning resolution is approximately 300% better than Republic standard equipment. Not bad for a rush job. Tony picked up the device, feeling its weight, testing its balance. Let's go show the good doctor what real technology looks like. Kix's skepticism evaporated within the first 30 seconds of the demonstration. Tony's scanner showed Hardcase's internal injuries in crystalline clarity, not just the major bleeding Kix had identified, but 3 smaller lacerations that were slowly killing the trooper. There, and there, Tony pointed to the holographic display. Your current scanner missed them because they're in vessels too small for your resolution threshold, but give them another hour and he'll crash. By the Force, Kix breathed, then caught himself. We need to get him to surgery immediately. I already sent the data to your surgical droid with recommended procedures. Tony pulled up another display. But there's more. Your biomonitor system is reactive. It tells you when a patient is crashing. This one's predictive. J.A.R.V.I.S has analyzed your medical database and built algorithms that can predict deterioration up to 4 hours in advance based on vital trend analysis. Kix stared at the readouts, then at Tony, then back at the readouts. This would save lives, dozens of lives, maybe hundreds. That's the idea. Tony handed him the scanner. It's yours. Use it. Test it. Break it if you can. And when you're satisfied it works, I'll build you 20 more. 20? Kix's eyes widened. The fabrication costs alone are irrelevant. I'm not charging the Republic for this. Consider it a down payment on trust. Tony glanced around the medical bay at the injured clones, each one wearing the same face but carrying different scars, different stories. These men are fighting a war they didn't choose. The least I can do is make sure more of them survive it. Anakin, who had been watching silently from the entrance, approached with something resembling respect on his face. The Council is going to want to see this. Let them see it. Let them see what I can do when I'm not building weapons. Tony's voice carried old pain, old guilt. I spent years creating technology that killed people. Time to balance the scales. The demonstration for the Jedi Council happened 3 hours later via hologram, with Kix presenting the scanner's capabilities while a medical droid performed surgery on Hardcase using real-time guidance from Tony's predictive algorithms. The surgery that should have taken 2 hours took 40 minutes with 0 complications. Yoda watched the entire procedure in silence, his ancient eyes missing nothing. When it concluded, he spoke softly. Impressive this technology is. Lives it will save, yes. But questions I have, Mr. Stark. I'm listening. Tony stood in the council chamber again, this time without his armor, letting them see him as just a man. Why help you do? Owe us nothing you do. Home you wish to return to. Yet freely you give technology that the Republic could not purchase at any price. Tony met the ancient Jedi's gaze. Because those men in that medical bay didn't ask to be created for war. They didn't choose to be soldiers, but they're people, and they're bleeding for a cause they believe in. Where I come from, we have a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. I've got power, technological power, Using it to save lives instead of taking them is the least I can do. Pretty speech, Mace Windu said, but his tone was less hostile than before. But technology can be weaponized. Today you build medical scanners. Tomorrow someone converts your designs into targeting systems. Which is why I'm not sharing the underlying principles, only the finished products. Tony had anticipated this argument. The scanners work, but if you try to reverse engineer them, they'll brick themselves. Same with anything else I build. You get the benefit without the ability to weaponize or replicate my technology. A dangerous game, Obi-Wan observed. You're making yourself indispensable. I'm making myself useful, Tony corrected. There's a difference. Indispensable means you can't function without me. Useful means I'm adding value while still maintaining appropriate boundaries. Boundaries, a Togruta female council member repeated. You don't trust us. I don't know you. Trust is earned, Master. Tony paused, waiting. Shock T. Master T. Trust is earned through actions over time. I've shown good faith by building medical technology with no strings attached. But I'm not naive enough to hand over my life's work to a government I've known for less than a day. Tony crossed his arms. If that makes me paranoid, so be it. Paranoia has kept me alive this long. The council members exchanged glances, probably having another telepathic conversation. Tony waited, patient for once, knowing he'd made his play. The medical scanner proved his capabilities. The self-destruct safeguards proved his caution. And the free gift proved he wasn't just mercenary. It was Yoda who finally spoke. Provisional ally of the Republic, you will be. Access to fabrication equipment you will have, and quarters more suitable for working. But monitored you will be, Mr. Stark. And should threat to the Republic you become. The ancient Jedi let the warning hang. Understood, I step out of line. You introduce me to your laser swords. Fair enough. Tony nodded slowly. What about the Separatists? Anakin showed me their intercepts. They want me badly enough to make me priority one. Protection you will have, Yoda assured him. But careful you must be. Powerful enemies you have made without even trying. Story of my life. Tony turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Kix mentioned he's the best medic in the 501st. If I'm building medical technology, I want him as my liaison. He understands what field medics actually need, not what some bureaucrat thinks they need. Granted, Mace Windu said. But Kix will report on your activities, transparency, Mr. Stark. I'm building medical scanners, not Death Stars. Kix can watch all he wants. As the holograms flickered out, Anakin fell into step beside Tony as they left the chamber. Death Star? Hypothetical superweapon, planet-destroying space station. Every evil empire builds one eventually. It's practically mandatory. Anakin laughed, but there was something hollow in it. Let's hope the Separatists don't get any ideas. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before Anakin spoke again. You handled the council well, better than most. Yoda likes you. How can you tell? He threatened to kill me. He threatens everyone. It's his way of showing he cares. Anakin's smile faded. But be careful, Stark. The council granted you provisional status, but they're still debating what to do with you long term. Some want you working directly for Republic military. Others want you locked in a research facility where you can't escape. And you? I want you where you can do the most good. Anakin stopped at an intersection, glancing down a corridor where clone troopers were conducting weapons drills. The war is turning against us. We need every advantage we can get. If that advantage comes from a man in an iron suit who appeared out of nowhere, he shrugged. I'll take it. Pragmatic, I like that. Tony studied the young Jedi carefully. You're different from the others, less dogmatic, more willing to bend rules. The Jedi Code is important, but it's not perfect. Sometimes you have to adapt to circumstances. Anakin's mechanical hand flexed unconsciously. The Council doesn't always see that. Red flags were waving in Tony's mind, but before he could probe further, alarms shrieked through the ship's corridors. Emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in red. Battle stations! A clone officer's voice boomed through the intercoms. Separatist fleet dropping out of hyperspace. All hands to battle stations. Anakin's expression hardened instantly, transforming from conflicted young man to focused warrior. They found us, Stark. Get to your quarters and stay there. Not a chance. Tony's armor flowed over his body from the housing unit on his chest, nanotech spreading across his limbs in seconds. You've got a battle, I've got a suit, let's see what this galaxy's got. Stark, I'm not asking permission, Skywalker. Tony's faceplate snapped into place, the HUD coming alive with tactical data. J.A.R.V.I.S status, multiple capital ships entering the system, sir. Separatist configuration. And, sir, one of them is broadcasting on all channels, specifically requesting your presence. Requesting or demanding? Demanding, sir, with threats to destroy the Resolute if you don't surrender yourself within the hour. Tony and Anakin locked eyes through the helmet's faceplate. They want you, Anakin said slowly. This whole attack is about capturing you. Then I guess I'm more valuable than I thought. Tony's repulsors activated, lifting him off the deck, which means I'm also exactly the kind of bait you can use to win this fight. I'm not using you as bait. You're not. I'm volunteering. Tony smiled grimly behind his mask. Time to show this galaxy what Iron Man can really do. The Resolute's bridge was controlled chaos. Clone officers coordinated defensive maneuvers, while holographic displays tracked the Separatist fleet. 3 Providence-class destroyers, 24 Munificent-class frigates, and a swarm of vulture droids that poured from their hangars like mechanical locusts. At the center of the formation hung the invisible hand, Count Dooku's flagship, broadcasting its ultimatum on repeat. Surrender the armored stranger or your ship will be reduced to atoms. You have 1 standard hour. Admiral Wolf Yularen stood rigid at the command station, his weathered face betraying no emotion. General Skywalker, General Kenobi, the Separatists have us outnumbered 3-1. Our reinforcements won't arrive for at least 2 hours. Then we hold for 2 hours, Obi-Wan said calmly, stroking his beard. We've faced worse odds. Not over a single individual. Yularen glanced at Tony, who stood to one side analyzing the tactical display through his HUD. No offense intended, Mr. Stark, but is your presence worth risking an entire Star Destroyer and her crew? Absolutely not, Tony said immediately, which is why I'm going out there. Out of the question, Obi-Wan said firmly. We don't negotiate with terrorists, and we certainly don't hand over individuals under Republic protection. I'm not suggesting you hand me over. I'm suggesting I give them exactly what they want, me in combat range, and then we tear their fleet apart while they're focused on capturing me instead of destroying you. Tony pulled up tactical projections, his fingers manipulating the holographic display. J.A.R.V.I.S has been analyzing their formation. They've got a kill corridor here, overlapping fields of fire designed to disable your ship without destroying it. They want the Resolute intact because I'm aboard. Strategic analysis from an AI, Anakin said, studying the display. Keep going. They're overextended. The munificent class frigates are spread thin to create that kill corridor, which means their point defense is weakened here, here, and here. Tony highlighted 3 points, and the invisible hand is hanging back, protected but out of optimal firing position. Whoever's commanding this fleet is being cautious. Count Dooku, Obi-Wan supplied. Former Jedi, now leader of the Separatist movement. Brilliant tactician and a master of Form 2 lightsaber combat. Former Jedi, Tony repeated, so he can use the Force. One of the most powerful Force users alive, Anakin said, and something dark flickered across his expression. He's also a Sith Lord. The bridge fell silent. Clone officers exchanged nervous glances. Yularen's jaw tightened. Obi-Wan shot Anakin a warning look. Anakin, Obi-Wan said carefully, that information is classified. Yeah, I know. But Stark's about to fly into combat against Dooku. He deserves to know what he's facing. Anakin turned to Tony. The Sith aren't extinct. They're leading the Separatists. Dooku and his master, we don't know who that is, have been orchestrating this war from the beginning. Tony processed this instantly. Both sides. You said you had a spy problem, that the Separatists always knew your moves. It's not a spy. It's a puppet master pulling strings on both sides. Pure speculation, Obi-Wan said, but he didn't deny it. Speculation with circumstantial evidence, Tony countered. A secret enemy manipulating a galactic civil war. Leaders who can literally read minds and see the future through mystical means, and a conflict that's perfectly balanced to cause maximum casualties without decisive victory for either side. His voice hardened. That's not war. That's a meat grinder designed to destroy both armies. Focus on surviving the next 2 hours, Yularen interrupted sharply. Philosophy can wait. Mr. Stark, if you're seriously proposing to engage a Separatist fleet alone, not alone, I'll have fighter support, right? Tony looked at Anakin. You'll have me, Anakin said immediately, and the 501st's best pilots. Anakin, this is reckless even by your standards, Obi-Wan protested. It's also the only tactical advantage we have. They want him master. They're willing to commit a major fleet to capture him. That kind of obsession creates exploitable weaknesses. Anakin was already moving toward the hangar bay. Rex, assemble Shadow Squadron, full combat load, and tell them we're flying escort for someone who fights like nothing they've ever seen. Tony followed, his armor systems running final diagnostics. J.A.R.V.I.S, how's our power situation? Arc reactor at 98%, sir. All weapon systems optimal. I've also taken the liberty of hacking into the Resolute's tactical network. I can provide real-time coordination with Republic forces. Hacking Republic systems while they're trusting us. I love it. Tony glanced at Obi-Wan, who was following despite his objections. You coming along to make sure I don't defect? I'm coming along because someone needs to keep Anakin from doing something suicidal, and you're clearly a bad influence. But Obi-Wan's tone carried grudging respect. Your tactical analysis was sound, Mr. Stark. Let's hope your combat capabilities match your engineering skills. Oh, they do. Tony's faceplate snapped shut. They really, really do. The hangar bay was organized pandemonium. Clone pilots in orange-marked armor sprinted to their V-19 Torrent starfighters, while deck crews armed weapons and fueled reactors. Captain Rex stood near Anakin's custom Jedi interceptor, his helmet tucked under one arm, his expression professionally skeptical. General, "You're sure about this?" Rex asked bluntly. "No offense to Mr. Stark, but we're escorting someone with no fighter training into a fleet engagement." "I don't need a fighter," Tony said, walking past Rex toward the atmospheric containment field that separated the hangar from space. "I am the fighter." "Sir, you're not serious." Tony's repulsors fired, launching him through the containment field and into the void. The transition was jarring, artificial gravity to 0 G in an instant, but his armor compensated automatically, stabilizing his trajectory and orienting towards the Separatist fleet. "Jarvis, give me targeting solutions for those frigates." "Calculated, sir. Recommend high-speed approach using their capital ships as cover to minimize point defense exposure. Once within optimal range, target their reactor clusters, here, here, and here." Republic starfighters screamed past him, Anakin's interceptor pulling alongside. The Jedi's voice crackled through the comm. "Stark, stay in formation. Don't get ahead of the..." Tony accelerated to Mach 3, the stars stretching into lines as he shot toward the Separatist fleet like a golden missile. Behind him, he could hear Rex swearing and Anakin laughing. "Or just do that!" Anakin's fighter banked hard, struggling to keep pace. "All wings, stay with him! Stark, what's your combat plan?" "Simple. I'm going to make them so focused on capturing me that they forget to shoot at you." Tony's HUD painted targeting solutions across dozens of enemy ships. "Jarvis, mark priority targets and feed coordinates to the Republic fighters." "Done, sir. Transmitting now. Also, the invisible hand is launching something. Droid star fighters, but, sir, there's another contact. Larger." Organic heat signature. A ship broke from the Separatist formation, sleek, predatory, moving with an agility that seemed impossible for its size. Through Tony's enhanced optics, he could see a figure standing in the open cockpit, crimson cape billowing in the void as if gravity and atmosphere were mere suggestions. Count Dooku, the Sith Lord, raised one hand, and Tony felt something, not physical pressure, but a presence like invisible fingers trying to grip his armor. The sensation slid off him like water off glass, and through the comm channel he could hear Dooku's cultured voice, frustrated and intrigued. "Fascinating. You truly are absent from the Force, a void where life should register." Dooku's ship angled directly toward Tony. "Surrender, stranger. My interest in your technology is professional, I assure you. You need not die today." "Pass." Tony armed every weapon system in his arsenal. "I've got a strict policy about not surrendering to people who threaten my friends. And yeah, I just met these guys, but they're growing on me." "Your loyalty is misplaced. The Republic is corrupt, decaying from within. The Separatists offer a cleaner future. Led by someone who uses the dark side of a mystical energy field? Yeah, that's not suspicious at all." Tony locked weapons on Dooku's ship. Last chance to back off. Dooku's response was to unleash a barrage of force lightning that arced across space. Impossible physics-defying energy that should have dissipated in vacuum, but instead coiled toward Tony like a living thing. "Jarvis." "Compensating, sir." Tony's armor grounded the lightning, channeling it away from vital systems. But the sheer power made his HUD flicker. Dooku was strong, stronger than anything Tony had faced except maybe Thor, and he was just getting started. "You cannot ground the Force, fool. It is not mere electricity." Dooku gestured and vulture droids swarmed from all directions, their weapons tracking Tony with mechanical precision. "Maybe not." Tony's shoulder pods opened, micro-missiles launching in a spiral pattern that caught the droids in overlapping explosions. But I can blow up anything shooting at me. That's universal. He dove toward the nearest munificent frigate, skimming along its hull so close that point defense turrets couldn't track him without risking friendly fire. Repulsor beams carved through sensor arrays and weapon emplacements, each strike surgical and devastating. Behind him, Anakin's squadron followed the path Tony cleared, their torpedoes slamming into the exposed reactor ports J.A.R.V.I.S had identified. The frigate's reactor went critical, a miniature sun blooming in the void. Tony burst through the explosion, armor scorched but intact, already targeting the next ship. "Stark, you're insane!" Rex's voice carried equal parts horror and admiration. "But it's working! Their formation is breaking!" "Dooku's trying to adjust," Anakin reported, his fighter weaving through enemy fire with force-enhanced precision. "But he can't predict your movements. You're a tactical blind spot." That was the advantage Tony hadn't fully appreciated. In a galaxy where precognition was real, where Force users could sense intent before action, he was invisible. Every move he made was a surprise, every attack unpredictable. And Dooku hated it. The Sith Lord's ship accelerated, moving faster than physics should allow, closing the distance with impossible speed. Dooku stood in the open cockpit, one hand extended, and this time the Force lightning didn't just arc, it exploded, a sphere of crackling energy that engulfed Tony completely. Warning indicators screamed. His HUD went dark. The arc reactor fluctuated. For a terrifying moment, Tony felt the armor systems failing, felt the lightning cooking him inside his own technology. Then J.A.R.V.I.S rerouted power, channeled the arc reactor's output into a feedback pulse that disrupted the Force lightning's coherence. The energy dissipated, and Tony burst free, repulsors blazing as he closed with Dooku's ship at point-blank range. "You want my technology?" Tony's repulsor beams fired at full power, not at Dooku, but at the ship beneath him. "Come and take it." The ship's hull cracked, systems failing. Dooku actually leaped through space without a suit, and landed on a passing vulture droid, using it as a platform to retreat toward the invisible hand. "This isn't over, stranger," Dooku's voice promised through the comm. "You've merely delayed the inevitable." "Story of my life," Tony pursued, but separatist ships moved to block him, creating a wall of fire between him and the flagship. More vulture droids swarmed, and even with his superior technology, Tony couldn't fight an entire fleet alone. "Stark, fall back!" Obi-Wan's voice cut through the chaos. "Republic reinforcements are arriving. We've won this engagement." Tony glanced at his sensors and saw the new contacts. 3 more Star Destroyers dropping out of hyperspace, their weapons already firing on the retreating Separatist fleet. Dooku's forces scattered, jumping to hyperspace in coordinated groups, abandoning the damaged frigates to their fate. He'd done it. Turned a 3-to-1 disadvantage into a rout, and all it cost was, Tony checked his diagnostics, 30% armor integrity and a temporary arc reactor fluctuation that J.A.R.V.I.S was already correcting. "Not bad for my second day in this galaxy," Tony muttered, turning back toward the Resolute. As he flew through the debris field of destroyed droids and damaged ships, Tony Stark allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. He'd proven his worth in the language warriors understood: combat. The Republic would trust him now, or at least trust his capabilities. But as he approached the hangar bay, watched clone pilots celebrating their victory, and heard Anakin's exhilarated laughter over the comm, Tony couldn't shake one thought. Dooku had used Force lightning in the vacuum of space, had leaped between ships without protection, had moved with power that made Thor's lightning look tame. And Dooku wasn't even the master. Somewhere out there was a Sith Lord even more powerful, pulling strings, orchestrating a war that was designed to never end. Tony had survived gods before, but in this galaxy, gods were real, could read minds, and had been planning their moves for years before he arrived. "J.A.R.V.I.S," Tony said quietly as he landed in the hangar. "Start building me something stronger than the Mark 50, something that can fight Force users on equal terms." "Sir, our materials are limited, and reverse engineering Force technology may prove." "Then we'll build something they've never seen before. Because next time Dooku comes calling, I'm not just going to survive." Tony's faceplate retracted as clone troopers surrounded him, cheering, celebrating the impossible victory. "Next time, I'm going to win." The debriefing lasted 3 hours. Tony stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic projections of the battle, Republic analysts dissecting every maneuver, every weapon signature, every tactical decision. Obi-Wan and Anakin fielded questions from high command, while Admiral Yularen provided sensor data that proved what everyone already knew. Tony Stark had turned an unwinnable engagement into a decisive Republic victory. 37 confirmed droid fighter kills, an analyst reported. 2 Munificent-class frigates disabled, 1 destroyed, and Mr. Stark forced Count Dooku himself to retreat, something the Republic has failed to accomplish in over 2 years of warfare. "Luck," Tony said flatly, though he didn't believe it. Dooku wasn't expecting someone he couldn't sense through the Force. "Element of surprise won't work twice." "Nevertheless," Yularen said, "your combat effectiveness exceeds initial projections by an order of magnitude. The Council will want to deploy you immediately on high-priority missions." "The Council can want whatever they like. I'm not a soldier." Tony pointed to the tactical display showing damaged Republic ships limping toward repair stations. "I said I'd help. I didn't say I'd become your personal attack dog." "Then what are you?" Mace Windu's hologram materialized at the table, his expression stern. "You fight like a warrior, build like an engineer, and refuse orders like an anarchist. The Republic doesn't know what to do with you, Mr. Stark. Join the club. Most days I don't know what to do with myself." Tony met Windu's gaze without flinching. "But here's what I'm not. I'm not a weapon you can point at your enemies and fire. I choose my battles, I choose my allies, and I especially choose whether I'm willing to kill for your cause." "You destroyed 37 droid fighters," Anakin pointed out. "Droids don't bleed. There's a difference between destroying machines and taking lives." Tony's voice carried old wounds. "I've crossed that line before. I'm not eager to cross it again without damn good reason." Yoda's hologram appeared beside Windu, ancient eyes studying Tony with uncomfortable perception. "Struggle with violence you do, yet powerful you are. Dangerous this combination is." "Dangerous to your enemies or dangerous to you?" Tony challenged. "Because I get the feeling this council wants a controllable asset, and I'm inconveniently autonomous." "We want to understand you," Obi-Wan interjected diplomatically. "Your technology operates on principles we can't fathom. Your combat style has no precedent in our databases, and your presence has already altered the strategic balance of this war. Surely you can understand our caution." Tony could, actually. If someone had dropped into his workshop with unexplainable technology and no verifiable history, he'd be paranoid too. But understanding didn't mean accepting. "Here's what I understand," Tony said. "Count Dooku wants my armor badly enough to risk a fleet engagement. That means I'm valuable, which means I'm also a target. Every separatist asset in this sector will be hunting me, which puts everyone around me in danger." He paused, letting that sink in. "So either you give me the resources to defend myself properly, or you're going to lose people protecting me." "Resources?" Windu repeated. "Such as?" "Workshop access with no monitoring, raw materials, access to your technical databases, all of them, not the sanitized version you've been feeding me. And most importantly, stop treating me like a prisoner you're pretending is a guest." The council members exchanged those silent looks again. Tony was learning to hate that telepathic communication, the sense that decisions were being made in conversations he couldn't hear. It was Anakin who broke the silence. "He's right. We've been asking Stark to risk his life for the Republic while keeping him on a leash. That's not how you treat an ally." "Anakin," Obi-Wan started. "No, Master. If the Separatists want him, we should be giving him every advantage to defend himself. And if that means trusting him with more access, then maybe that's what trust actually looks like." Mace Windu's hologram flickered with what might have been irritation. "Your opinion is noted, Skywalker, but this decision requires council deliberation." "Then deliberate quickly," Tony said, "because Dooku knows I'm on the Resolute now. He'll be back, probably with a bigger fleet and a better plan. You've got maybe 72 hours before the next attack." "Speculation," Yularen challenged. "Educated guess based on 20 years of dealing with people who want to steal my technology." Tony pulled up fleet disposition data that J.A.R.V.I.S had quietly compiled. "Look at separatist movements over the last 6 months. Dooku doesn't commit forces unless he's confident of victory. Today he retreated, which means he's regrouping for a second attempt. And this time, he won't underestimate me." The holographic Jedi Masters studied the data, and Tony could see the moment they realized he was right. Dooku was predictable in his unpredictability, always probing, always learning, always adapting. "Very well," Yoda said finally. "Greater access you will have, but monitored still you will be, Mr. Stark. Trust earned, not given freely, it is." "Fair enough." Tony turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. That Force lightning Dooku used, it disrupted my systems temporarily. If I'm going to fight more Sith Lords, I need to understand how the Force interacts with technology, which means I need to talk to someone who knows the Force intimately." "Absolutely not," Windu said immediately. "Force knowledge is restricted to Jedi. We will not share our understanding with an outsider. Then the next time Dooku attacks, my armor might fail, and you'll lose your new tactical advantage." Tony's tone was matter of fact. "Your call, Masters. Pride or pragmatism?" Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Perhaps a compromise. Mr. Stark doesn't need Jedi training. He needs technical understanding of Force technology interaction. That's not about learning to use the Force. It's about defending against it." "A dangerous distinction," Windu warned. "But a necessary one," Anakin added. "If Stark's armor can be upgraded to resist Force attacks, that makes him more effective in combat, which serves the Republic's interests." The council deliberated for another minute before Yoda spoke. "Work with Skywalker, you will. Limited instruction only. And supervised. This education will be." Tony glanced at Anakin, who shrugged with a slight smile. "Looks like we're lab partners." "Try not to blow anything up," Obi-Wan said dryly. "No promises," Tony and Anakin said simultaneously, then looked at each other with matching grins. The workshop Tony had been allocated was significantly better than the converted storage bay, a proper engineering space with Republic fabricators, holographic design stations, and enough raw materials to build a small arsenal. Kix had already moved some medical equipment in, testing the upgraded scanners on volunteer clones who reported improved diagnostic accuracy. But Tony had commandeered the back corner for a different project, one that J.A.R.V.I.S monitored with analytical precision, while Anakin watched with barely concealed curiosity. "So this is where the magic happens," Anakin said, examining a partially assembled gauntlet that crackled with contained energy. "No magic, pure engineering." Tony adjusted the power flow regulator, watching holographic readouts stabilize. "Though in your galaxy, the line between technology and magic is blurrier than I'm comfortable with. The Force isn't magic, it's an energy field created by all living things. Binds the galaxy together, yada yada." I got the speech from Obi-Wan. Tony set down his tools and faced Anakin directly. "But here's what I need to know. Dooku's lightning disrupted my systems. My armor is designed to ground electrical attacks. But whatever he threw at me wasn't normal electricity. So what was it?" Anakin considered the question carefully. "Force lightning is complicated. It's not just electricity. Though it has electrical properties, it's the dark side made manifest, raw emotion, anger, and hatred channeled through the Force into destructive energy. Emotion becomes energy, that's..." Tony paused, his engineering mind struggling with the concept. "That violates conservation of energy in ways that make my teeth hurt. Where does the power come from?" "The Force. It's everywhere, connecting everything. A skilled Force user can draw on it, shape it, use it." Anakin held out his hand, and a tool on the workbench trembled, then flew across the room into his palm. Telekinesis, precognition, enhanced reflexes, all of it comes from being connected to the Force. And I'm not connected. Tony watched the casual display of impossible physics. Which means I'm immune to mental manipulation. Precognition doesn't work on me. And Force users can't sense me coming. Exactly. It's why you're so dangerous to us. To all Force users. Anakin set down the tool. But it also means you can't be directly attacked through the Force. Dooku can't crush your heart or snap your neck with telekinesis because you're absent, a void. But his lightning still worked. Because lightning is energy projected outward, not a direct Force manipulation of your body. He's throwing power at you, not trying to control you. Anakin pulled up a holographic display showing energy patterns. The problem is that Force lightning carries dark side energy. It's designed to corrupt, to cause pain beyond mere electrical damage. Your armor protected you physically, but the Force component still affected your systems. Tony studied the patterns, his mind racing. So I need shielding that can disperse not just electricity, but also this dark side energy you're talking about. Which means I need to understand the Force as a quantifiable phenomenon. That's not really how the Jedi approach it. Yeah, well, I'm not a Jedi. I'm an engineer, and engineers quantify everything. Tony began pulling up equations, overlaying them with the Force energy patterns Anakin had shown him. J.A.R.V.I.S analyzed these signatures, Look for mathematical relationships, resonance frequencies, anything we can work with. Sir, the Force appears to operate on principles that don't conform to standard physical models. However, I'm detecting quantum-level interactions that might provide a framework for... The workshop door hissed open, interrupting J.A.R.V.I.'s analysis. Captain Rex entered, his armor bearing fresh scorch marks from the recent battle, his expression professionally neutral. General Skywalker, Mr. Stark, we've got a situation. Define situation, Tony said, not looking up from his work. 3 clone troopers from the 212th Battalion are in medical. They were running security sweeps in the lower decks and found something. Kix is examining them now, but he says their symptoms don't match any Republic database. That got Tony's attention. He exchanged glances with Anakin, then both headed for the door. What kind of symptoms? Anakin asked as they jogged toward medical. Neural disruption, memory gaps, and elevated midi-chlorian readings that don't make sense for non-Force sensitives. Rex's voice carried worry. Sir, whatever affected them, it's spreading. 2 more troopers reported similar symptoms an hour ago. Tony's danger sense spiked hard. J.A.R.V.I.S, scan for anomalies, biological agents, energy signatures, anything unusual. Scanning, sir. I'm detecting elevated tachyon readings. That shouldn't be possible in stable space-time. They burst into medical to find Kix standing over 3 unconscious clones, his expression grim. Medical droids worked frantically, but even Tony's upgraded scanners showed readings that made no sense. Neural patterns fluctuating wildly, cellular structures destabilizing, and something else. Something that Tony's sensors couldn't quite identify. Kix, report, Anakin demanded. I don't know, sir. It's like something is rewriting their neural pathways, but there's no biological agent, no radiation, no chemical contamination. They're just changing. Kix looked up and Tony saw fear in his eyes. And it's accelerating. If I can't stop it in the next hour, they'll die. Tony moved to the scanners, pulling up the data and feeding it to J.A.R.V.I.S for analysis. There, see that? Quantum-level disturbances in their cellular structures. Something is fundamentally altering them at the molecular level. The Force? Anakin suggested, moving closer. Maybe, but wrong signature. Tony overlaid the patterns with what Anakin had shown him earlier. This isn't dark side energy, it's something else. Something foreign, J.A.R.V.I.S finished. Sir, these patterns are similar to the readings I detected when we first arrived in this galaxy. The dimensional rift. Tony's blood went cold. You're saying something from the rift is affecting them, or something came through the rift with us, sir. Something we didn't detect. Anakin's hand went to his lightsaber. What came through, Stark? What did you bring to this galaxy? I don't know. Tony's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. J.A.R.V.I.S, run a full diagnostic on every scan we took during transit. Look for stowaways, energy signatures, dimensional bleed, anything. Already running, sir. But if something did follow us through, it's been hiding for over 48 hours. Waiting. Waiting for what? Rex demanded. Tony looked at the dying clones, at their identical faces twisted in pain, at the impossible readings that showed something rewriting human biology in real time. I don't know, he said quietly, but we're about to find out. The lower decks of the Resolute were dimly lit maintenance corridors where clone engineers kept the Star Destroyer's critical systems running. Emergency lighting cast everything in amber, and the normal hum of a warship felt subdued, almost expectant. Tony's armor registered elevated electromagnetic readings as he moved through the passages with Anakin and a squad of clone troopers led by Rex. J.A.R.V.I.S talked to me. The tachyon readings are concentrated in Section 7 Delta, sir, 2 levels below our current position. Whatever is causing the contamination, it's been there since we arrived in this galaxy. Since we arrived, Tony repeated. So something did follow us through. Unknown, sir, but the dimensional rift we traversed created a temporary weakening in local space-time. It's possible that something else exploited that weakness to cross over. Anakin's hand rested on his lightsaber, the weapon unlit but ready. I don't sense anything through the Force. No life signs, no presence. Like me, Tony said. Whatever this is, it might be another void in your mystical radar. Which means we're blind. Rex's voice was tense. Permission to evacuate this section, General? Denied. If we evacuate, whatever's down here might spread to other sections. Anakin's eyes glowed slightly in the dim light. No, that was just reflection. But Tony's sensors registered elevated electromagnetic activity around the Jedi. We contain it here. They descended through maintenance access shafts, the air growing colder with each level. Tony's HUD painted thermal signatures across his vision, power conduits, coolant lines, and something else. A cold spot that shouldn't exist. A place where temperature dropped 40 degrees below ambient without any mechanical explanation. There, Tony said, highlighting the location for the team. Section 7 Delta 3, J.A.R.V.I.S, what are we looking at? Scanning now, sir. I'm detecting this is peculiar. The space-time distortion is localized but intense. It's as if reality is slightly out of phase in that area. And sir, I'm detecting biological readings. Human, but corrupted somehow. Corrupted how? They're reading as both alive and dead simultaneously. Quantum superposition, but applied to biological matter. This shouldn't be possible. The squad approached the blast door to Section 7 Delta 3. Rex positioned his men in standard breach formation, while Anakin moved to open the door manually, using the Force to override the locked controls. On my mark, Rex said. 3, 2, 1. The door exploded outward, not from external force, but from something inside that punched through durasteel like paper. A figure emerged, human-shaped, but wrong. Its movements jerky and disjointed like a puppet with tangled strings. It wore the remnants of a clone trooper's armor, but the man inside was no longer human. His skin was translucent, revealing muscles and bones that flickered between solid matter and something else. Shadow, void, absence. His eyes were empty sockets that somehow still saw, tracking the squad with predatory focus. And when he opened his mouth, the sound that emerged wasn't a voice, but a harmonic shriek that made Tony's audio filters spike. Contact! Rex fired, his blaster bolt striking the creature center mass. The energy dissipated on impact, absorbed into the thing's impossible physiology. Weapons ineffective. Tony's repulsors fired instinctively. The beams struck the creature and passed through it, hitting the wall behind and leaving molten scars on metal. The thing didn't even flinch. It's not fully in our dimension, J.A.R.V.I.S reported urgently. It exists in a state of quantum flux between realities. Standard weapons can't affect it because they're only interacting with part of its mass. Then what can affect it? Tony backed up, putting himself between the creature and the clone troopers. Anakin's lightsaber ignited with a snap hiss of brilliant blue plasma. The creature recoiled, its shriek intensifying, and for the first time Tony saw genuine reaction. Fear, or the corrupted memory of fear. The Force, Anakin said, his voice tight with concentration. It exists between dimensions, which means it exists where the Force does, where everything does. He moved forward, lightsaber held in a defensive stance. Get back, all of you. This is beyond your weapons. The creature lunged with impossible speed. Anakin met it mid-leap, his lightsaber carving through the thing's arm. The limbs separated, fell, and dissolved into shadow that crept back toward the main body. But the wound didn't close instantly. The lightsaber's energy had disrupted whatever physics held the creature together. It can be hurt, Tony observed, his engineer's mind already working the problem. J.A.R.V.I.S analyzed the lightsaber's effect. What's different about plasma weapons? The plasma blade exists in a contained magnetic field generated by kyber crystal energy, sir. The crystals themselves appear to have quantum properties that interact with the Force. They're essentially weapons that exist partially outside normal space-time, which means they can hit things that also exist outside normal space-time. Tony's arc reactor pulsed as he rerouted power. Can we replicate that? Not without kyber crystals, sir. However, the arc reactor generates similar quantum fluctuations. If we could amplify and project them, do it. Override safeties if you have to. Tony's repulsors began glowing brighter, their characteristic blue-white intensifying to brilliant azure. The arc reactor in his chest burned so bright it cast hard shadows, and his HUD screamed warnings about power levels exceeding safety margins. The creature turned from Anakin to Tony, sensing the changed energy signature. It lunged again, claws extended, mouth opening to reveal teeth that flickered in and out of existence. Tony fired. The repulsor beam struck the creature, and this time it connected. The thing screamed, a sound that existed on frequencies human ears couldn't process, but that rattled Tony's bones anyway and staggered back. Where the beam hit, its translucent flesh solidified, became real, became vulnerable. Anakin, now! The Jedi didn't hesitate. His lightsaber swept through the creature's torso, the plasma blade meeting resistance as the thing's quantum state collapsed under the combined assault. It fell in two pieces that dissolved into shadow, then into nothing, leaving only scorch marks and the lingering scent of ozone. Silence filled the corridor, broken only by heavy breathing and the hum of lightsaber and repulsors powering down. What? Rex said slowly. Was that? Something that followed us through the dimensional rift, Tony said, running diagnostics on his overloaded systems. Something that exists between realities, feeding on, what? Energy? Life force? The clones, Anakin realized. The ones in medical. This thing was draining them, using them to anchor itself to our reality. And there might be more. Tony pulled up his scans of Section 7 Delta 3, analyzing the residual energy. J.A.R.V.I.S, how many dimensional incursions are we looking at? Unknown, sir. The quantum distortions make accurate counting impossible. But based on the energy drain patterns affecting the afflicted clones, I estimate between 3 and 7 additional entities. 7. Rex's voice was flat. 7 of those things. Loose on my ship. Not for long. Tony's armor began reconfiguring, nanotech flowing into new patterns as J.A.R.V.I.S implemented emergency protocols. I'm adapting my weapons to target quantum unstable matter. It'll drain my arc reactor faster, but I can hurt them now. Anakin deactivated his lightsaber. We need to evacuate the affected sections and conduct a systematic sweep. Find these things before they spread the contamination further. Agreed, but there's another problem. Tony highlighted his sensor data. These creatures are attracted to energy sources, life energy, force energy, reactor cores. Anything that radiates power draws them, which means the main reactor, Rex finished grimly. If they're hunting energy, they'll eventually find their way to the ship's power plant, where they can drain enough energy to stabilize themselves in our reality. Tony was already moving toward the nearest access shaft. We need to get to engineering before they do. They ran through the maintenance corridors, Rex's squad providing cover while Anakin and Tony took point. The ship's ambient sounds felt threatening now. Every mechanical groan, every distant footstep could be another creature phasing into reality. "Sir," one of the clone troopers called out, "movement bearing 047. Another creature emerged from a ventilation duct, this one more solid than the first. It had been feeding longer, growing stronger, and its attack was coordinated. It dropped onto a clone trooper with predatory precision, claws raking across armor that suddenly wasn't protection enough. The trooper screamed once before Tony's repulsor beam caught the creature mid-strike, forcing it into quantum stability, long enough for Anakin's lightsaber to remove its head. The body collapsed, already dissolving, but the damage was done. The trooper lay motionless, his armor breached, his life signs flattering on Tony's HUD. "Fives is down." Rex knelt beside his brother, checking for vitals, finding none. "Damn it. Keep moving," Anakin ordered, voice hard with the command of a general who'd learned to function through loss. "We grieve later. Right now we save everyone else." They pressed on, encountering 2 more creatures in the next 5 minutes. Each one was stronger than the last, more present in reality, more difficult to hurt. Tony's arc reactor was already down to 70%, the quantum-enhanced repulsors draining power faster than he'd anticipated. "J.A.R.V.I.S, how long can we maintain this output?" "At current consumption rates, sir, approximately 47 minutes before we reach critical reserves. I recommend we..." The ship's emergency alarms cut through the air, red lights flooding the corridors. "Engineering breach," a voice crackled over the comm. "Multiple hostile contacts in the main reactor chamber. All available personnel to Section 3 Alpha immediately." Anakin and Tony exchanged grim looks. "They're already there," Tony said. "Then we fight them there." Anakin broke into a force-enhanced run, moving faster than any human should. "Rex, get your men to engineering. Everyone else seal all access points. I don't want these things spreading to other decks." Tony's repulsors fired, launching him through the corridors at dangerous speed. His armor calculated trajectories on the fly, avoiding pipes and conduits by centimeters, trusting J.A.R.V.I.'s processing power to keep him from crashing into bulkheads at Mach speeds. They reached engineering to find chaos. 5 creatures, no, 6, had manifested around the reactor core, drawn to its massive energy output like moths to flame. Clone engineers fought desperately with whatever weapons they could grab. Plasma torches, maintenance tools, even their bare hands. But nothing conventional could touch the quantum unstable entities. The creatures were feeding, growing more solid with each passing second, their translucent flesh taking on color and definition. In minutes, they would fully stabilize, would become permanent fixtures in this reality, would spread throughout the ship like a plague that conventional weapons couldn't stop. Tony landed in the center of the reactor chamber, repulsors charging to maximum output, despite the warnings flooding his HUD. Anakin was beside him instantly, lightsaber blazing, the 2 of them forming a defensive line between the creatures and the dying engineers. "J.A.R.V.I.S, I need everything we've got." Full power to repulsors, damn the consequences. Sir, that will deplete the arc reactor to critical levels. We won't have enough power to maintain life support, weapons, or flight capabilities. I know. Tony looked at Anakin, at the Jedi who'd chosen to trust him, despite every reason not to. At Rex and his men who'd fought beside him without question. At a ship full of clone troopers who'd been created for war, but who laughed and hoped and bled like anyone else. Do it anyway. The arc reactor flared like a miniature sun, pouring every erg of energy it could generate into Tony's weapons systems. His repulsors transformed from blue-white to blinding azure to something beyond, a color that hurt to look at, that existed at the intersection of technology and the Force itself. He fired, not at individual creatures, but at all of them simultaneously. Beams of quantum stabilizing energy that forced impossible things to become possible, that dragged entities from between dimensions and made them vulnerable to this reality's laws. The creatures solidified, screaming in harmonics that shattered glass and made metal groan. Anakin moved through them like a storm, his lightsaber a blur of blue death that found flesh made real by Tony's technology. One fell, then two, then three, but the effort was killing Tony's systems. His HUD flickered, the arc reactor's glow dimmed. Warning indicators turned red across the board. "Stark, disengage!" Anakin shouted. "Your reactor's failing!" "Not yet!" Tony pushed harder, forcing the last three creatures into full stability, even as his armor began to shut down around him. "Just a little more!" The arc reactor guttered like a candle in wind. Tony's repulsors died. His HUD went dark, life support flatlined. For a terrifying moment, he was just a man in a very expensive coffin, falling towards the reactor floor as his armor lost all power. Then Anakin caught him, Force-assisted telekinesis slowing his fall, and finished the job. The last three creatures died to lightsaber strikes that would have been impossible without Tony forcing them into reality. Silence. Tony lay on the deck, armor completely inert, struggling to breathe as emergency reserves kicked in to maintain basic life support. Through the failing systems, he could hear Rex calling for medical, could hear Anakin ordering the engineers to safety. "J.A.R.V.I.S," Tony whispered. "Status." No response. Even his AI was offline, the arc reactor too depleted to power anything but the most basic functions. "You idiot," Anakin said, but there was respect in his voice. "You nearly killed yourself." "Did it work?" "Yeah, it worked." Anakin helped him sit up. "All 6 creatures are dead, the reactor's intact, and you're about to pass out from power depletion." "Worth it." Tony's vision was blurring at the edges. The arc reactor in his chest pulsed weakly, drawing on emergency reserves that were never meant to sustain him for long. How long until J.A.R.V.I.S reboots? "Medical's on the way. Just stay conscious, Stark." But consciousness was optional at this point, and Tony felt himself slipping away despite Anakin's voice calling him back. His last thought before darkness claimed him was simple. In a galaxy where the Force made gods of men, Tony Stark had just proven that engineering could fight back, even if it killed him in the process. Tony woke to the steady beep of medical monitors and the uncomfortable sensation of Bacta patches adhered to his chest around the arc reactor. His armor lay in pieces across a nearby workbench. Nanotech housing units separated and connected to diagnostic equipment that Kix was studying with intense concentration. "Welcome back, sir." Jarvis's voice was quieter than usual, coming from external speakers rather than the armor's systems. You've been unconscious for approximately 4 hours and 17 minutes. Feels longer. Tony tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every muscle screamed protest, and the arc reactor pulsed with an irregular rhythm that felt wrong. Status report: the arc reactor is stable, but operating at 42% capacity. The quantum enhancement protocols I implemented caused significant stress to the primary power conduits. Repairs are underway, but full functionality won't be restored for at least 36 hours. The creatures? Eliminated. All 7 entities have been confirmed destroyed. The contaminated clone troopers are recovering, though their neural patterns show permanent alterations. Kix has them under observation. Tony finally managed to sit up, ignoring the protests from his body. Kix noticed immediately and crossed the medical bay with a scanner in hand. "Sir, you need to rest. Your body went through massive electromagnetic stress when the arc reactor nearly failed. I've never seen readings like this. It's as if your entire nervous system was overloaded." That's exactly what happened. Tony touched his chest, feeling the arc reactor's diminished pulse. The reactor is tied to my cardiovascular system. When it fails, I fail. Then you're lucky to be alive. Kix ran his scanner over Tony's vital signs, frowning at the results. Your heart rhythm is irregular. Neural activity shows signs of temporary trauma, and whatever those creatures were, fighting them left residual quantum signatures in your tissues that I don't have the medical knowledge to treat. I'll heal. I always do. Tony swung his legs off the bed, standing on shaky legs. Where's Anakin? Debriefing with the Council. Kix hesitated. They're concerned, sir, about what you brought to this galaxy. I didn't bring those things intentionally. I know, but intention doesn't change the fact that 7 people died fighting them. Clone troopers who followed you into combat because they trusted you. Kix's voice was carefully neutral, but Tony could hear the accusation underneath. Fives was one of the best soldiers in the 501st. Now he's gone because something from your universe decided to follow you here. The guilt hit like a physical blow. Tony had spent years living with the consequences of his weapons, the people who died because of technology he'd created. But this was different. These deaths were caused by something he didn't even know existed, a threat he couldn't have predicted. I'm sorry, Tony said quietly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Kix studied him for a long moment, then nodded. General Skywalker vouched for you, said you nearly died protecting the reactor, protecting all of us. That counts for something. He gestured to Tony's armor. I've been working with your AI to understand the repairs. J.A.R.V.I.S is remarkable. I've never encountered anything like him. He's one of a kind. Tony moved to the workbench, examining the disassembled armor with a critical eye. The nanotech housing unit showed stress fractures from the quantum enhancement overload. The arc reactor's primary power conduits had micro fractures that would need complete replacement. This is going to take more than 36 hours to fix properly. Then it's fortunate you have help. Anakin's voice came from the medical bay entrance. The Jedi looked exhausted, his robes bearing scorch marks from the battle, but his eyes were alert. The Council wants to see you now. Let me guess, they want explanations I don't have. They want accountability. There's a difference. Anakin's tone was carefully diplomatic. Come on, and Stark, whatever you do, don't antagonize Master Windu. He's already pushing for your confinement until the dimensional rift situation is resolved. The council chamber felt more hostile than before. All 12 members were present, not holograms this time, but physically assembled on Coruscant, with Tony appearing via holographic projection from the Resolute. Their expressions ranged from concerned to outright suspicious, and Mace Windu looked like he was restraining himself from ordering Tony's immediate arrest. "Mr. Stark," Windu began without preamble, "you assured us that you posed no threat to the Republic, yet entities from your universe have killed 7 of our soldiers and contaminated dozens more. Explain." "I can't." Tony met each council member's gaze in turn. "I had no knowledge those creatures existed, let alone that they'd follow me through the dimensional rift. If I'd known, I would have warned you immediately." "Ignorance is not innocence," a Keldor Jedi said. Plo Koon, Tony's HUD, identified. "Your arrival disrupted the fabric of reality. The consequences are your responsibility regardless of intent." "Agreed, which is why I'm taking responsibility." Tony pulled up holographic data showing the dimensional rift's energy signatures. J.A.R.V.I.S has been analyzing the quantum distortions since we arrived. The rift is stable now, but there's residual dimensional weakness that could allow more entities to cross over. I can seal it, but I'll need resources and time. "Seal it how?" Yoda asked, leaning forward with interest. "By generating a quantum field that reinforces local space-time, essentially cauterizing the wound in reality. It'll require significant power, probably more than the Resolute's reactor can provide, but it's theoretically possible." "Theoretically," Windu repeated. "You're asking us to trust your untested theory with the safety of this entire sector. I'm offering the only solution I've got, unless you have Jedi techniques for sealing dimensional rifts." Tony's tone carried challenge. "The Force is powerful, Masters, but this is a problem that requires technology, not mysticism." "Arrogant," a human Jedi muttered, "even PL. You speak as if technology is superior to the Force." "I speak as if they're different tools for different problems. The Force didn't detect those creatures, and it couldn't hurt them without my technology forcing them into phase. And it won't seal the rift without understanding quantum mechanics." Tony crossed his arms. "I'm not claiming superiority. I'm claiming specialized knowledge that you need." Silence fell across the chamber. The council members exchanged those telepathic glances again, and Tony resisted the urge to comment on how annoying that was. It was Obi-Wan who finally spoke. "Master Yoda, if I may, Mr. Stark has proven his value twice now. First in combat against Dooku's fleet, and second in neutralizing the dimensional entities. Yes, his arrival caused the problem, but he also solved it at significant personal cost. Perhaps we should focus on preventing future incidents rather than assigning blame for past ones." "Wise counsel Kenobi provides," Yoda said slowly. "But concerned we are, yes. Power without understanding, danger it is. And Mr. Stark, powerful you are. Understand yourself, do you?" The question hit deeper than Tony expected. Did he understand himself? He'd spent years as Iron Man, fighting aliens and gods, protecting a world that didn't always want protection. But here, in a galaxy where the rules were different, where his technology made him simultaneously invaluable and threatening. "I understand that I'm dangerous," Tony said honestly. "I understand that my presence has consequences I can't always predict. And I understand that the only way forward is to work with you, not against you, to minimize those consequences." "Pretty words," Windu said, "but words don't resurrect dead soldiers." "No, they don't." Tony's voice hardened. "But neither does locking me up and pretending the problem doesn't exist. The rift is there. More entities could come through, and I'm the only one who can stop them because I'm the only one who understands the physics involved. Then you will seal it, Yoda decided. Resources you will have, but supervised you will be, yes. And Mr. Stark, fail you must not. Too much at stake there is. I don't plan to fail, Tony turned to Anakin. I'll need access to the Republic's largest power generators, multiple reactors synchronized to output precisely calibrated energy, and I'll need to do it somewhere isolated. If something goes wrong, I don't want to be near populated systems. There's an old research station in the Rishi system, Obi-Wan suggested, abandoned after the Separatists took the sector. But its power systems should still be functional. We could escort you there. Make it happen, and Anakin. Tony caught the Jedi's attention. I'll need your help too. The quantum field I'm building will interact with the Force in ways I can't predict. Having someone Force-sensitive monitoring the process might prevent catastrophic failure. The Council hasn't approved my involvement, Anakin pointed out. Go with him, you will, Yoda said before Windu could object. Balance the Force requires. Technology and mysticism together, they must work. Windu looked like he wanted to argue, but held his tongue. The decision was made. As the Council dismissed the session, Tony's hologram flickered out, leaving him alone in the Resolute's communication chamber. He stood there for a moment processing everything, feeling the weight of 7 deaths pressing on his conscience. J.A.R.V.I.S probability analysis. Can we actually seal the rift? Theoretical probability is 63%, sir. However, that assumes optimal conditions and no unexpected variables. Given our track record with unexpected variables, yeah. Tony rubbed his face tiredly. We're definitely going to encounter unexpected variables. Indeed, sir. Though I should note that the Council's decision to trust you represents significant progress. Master Windu's objections notwithstanding, you've demonstrated value to the Republic. Value? Tony laughed without humor. I'm a weapon they're learning to aim. The second I stop being useful or become too dangerous, they'll find a way to neutralize me. A pragmatic assessment, sir. What will you do? Tony looked at his damaged armor, at the arc reactor pulsing weakly in his chest, at the impossible galaxy he'd found himself trapped in. What I always do, Jay. Build something better, adapt, survive. He moved to the workbench and began reassembling his armor with practiced efficiency, and hope that when the next crisis hits, and there will be a next crisis, I'm ready for it. 3 decks below, in a maintenance corridor that standard sensors never quite registered, something stirred. Not one of the dimensional entities. Those had all been destroyed. This was different. Older, more patient. It had watched Tony Stark fight the creatures, had observed his technology, had learned. And now, as the ship prepared to transit to the Rishi system, it began the next phase of its plan. The Sith had many tools for manipulation. The Force was the most elegant, but far from the only option. And for someone who couldn't be touched by the Force, more creative approaches were required. The device activated silently, its programming elegant in its simplicity. It would take time, weeks, perhaps months, but eventually it would corrupt everything Tony Stark had built, would turn his greatest strengths into fatal weaknesses. And when Iron Man finally fell, the Republic would fall with him. Far away on a world shrouded in darkness, Darth Sidious smiled. Let the engineer build his quantum field, the Sith Lord murmured to the empty throne room. Let him believe he's solving problems. Every solution he creates is another tool for my collection. And when the time comes to activate those tools, he gestured, and a holographic display showed the Resolute preparing for departure. Showed Tony Stark in his workshop, showed the pieces moving exactly as planned. He will serve the Empire whether he wishes to or not. The Rishi research station hung in the void like a forgotten monument to better times. Its modular construction spoke of Republic ambition, laboratories, power generators, and living quarters designed for long-term scientific expeditions. But the Separatist invasion had left it scarred and silent. Viewports blown out, solar arrays damaged, and its corridors opened a vacuum in dozens of sections. Tony floated through the main reactor chamber in his fully repaired Mark 50 armor, surveying the damage with J.A.R.V.I.'s analytical assistance. The past week had been spent rebuilding his systems, upgrading his quantum stabilizers, and preparing for the most ambitious engineering project he'd attempted in this galaxy. 6 primary reactors, Tony observed, his HUD painting structural analysis across his vision. 3 are completely offline, 2 are running at minimum capacity, and 1 is held together by what I can only describe as wishful thinking and prayer. The station was designed to power research into hyperspace anomalies, Anakin said through the comm, his voice slightly distorted by the communication relay. He was in the command center 3 levels above, coordinating with the clone engineering teams that Obi-Wan had brought along. Ironic that we're using it to seal a dimensional rift. Irony is the universe's way of laughing at us. Tony moved to the nearest reactor, examining its power coupling systems. J.A.R.V.I.S, can we get these operational in 72 hours? With the clone engineering teams, yes. However, synchronizing 6 reactors to output the precise quantum frequencies required will be exponentially more difficult. A 0.03% variance in any reactor will cause catastrophic cascade failure. So we need to be perfect. Great. No pressure. Tony spent the next 6 hours working alongside clone engineers whose technical expertise surprised him. They approached problems with methodical precision, their identical minds somehow producing unique solutions. CT-7567, Rex, proved particularly adept at creative improvisation, jury-rigging power couplings that shouldn't work but did anyway. "You're good at this," Tony commented, watching Rex bypass a damaged power regulator, using components from 3 different systems. 2 years of keeping military equipment functional in combat conditions, Rex replied, his voice carrying quiet pride. "You learn to make do with what you have. That's engineering in a nutshell." Tony helped secure the bypass. Whether you're in a workshop or a war zone, the principle is the same. Identify the problem, find the resources, make it work. Is that what you did when you built your first armor? Rex glanced at the arc reactor glowing through Tony's chest. The 501st has heard stories that you built something incredible with almost nothing. Tony's hand unconsciously touched the reactor. "I built it to survive. Everything else came later." They worked in companionable silence. After that, 2 engineers from different galaxies united by the universal language of making broken things work again. Around them, other clone teams restored power conduits, replaced damaged circuits, and slowly brought the station back to life. By hour 68, all 6 reactors were operational. By hour 70, Tony had synchronized their output frequencies to within acceptable tolerances. By hour 72, he was standing in the central control chamber, Surrounded by holographic displays that showed the quantum field equations he'd spent a lifetime never imagining he'd need. All right, Jay, moment of truth. Will this actually work? Theoretical models suggest yes, sir. However, I must note that we're attempting to manipulate fundamental forces of reality using technology designed in a different universe. The margin for error is considerable. Story of my life. Tony pulled up the activation sequence. Anakin, you in position? Ready? The Jedi was in a meditation chamber that Tony had cleared of debris, sitting cross-legged with his lightsaber laid across his knees. His role was simple but critical. Monitor the Force's reaction to the quantum field and alert Tony if reality started unraveling in ways sensors couldn't detect. Obi-Wan, status on the perimeter? All Republic ships are maintaining safe distance. If this goes wrong, we'll have time to evacuate before the station destroys itself. Obi-Wan's calm British accent made catastrophic failure sound almost acceptable. Though I'm curious, Mr. Stark, what exactly constitutes going wrong in this scenario? Best case, the quantum field fails to generate and we're back to square one. Worst case, we tear a hole in space-time large enough to swallow this entire star system. Tony paused. Don't worry, I'm pretty sure it'll be somewhere in the middle. How reassuring. Tony began the activation sequence. The 6 reactors hummed in perfect synchronization, their power output rising steadily as J.A.R.V.I.S coordinated their frequencies. Energy flowed through channels Tony had built, through quantum stabilizers adapted from his arc reactor technology, through emitters positioned around the station in a geometric pattern that existed as much in theoretical mathematics as physical space. The quantum field began to form. Tony's sensors registered at first, a distortion in local space-time that spread outward from the station like ripples in water. The dimensional rift he'd been tracking, that weak point in reality where he'd entered this galaxy, suddenly became visible. Not to normal sensors, but through quantum state analysis, J.A.R.V.I.S painted it across the holographic display. It looked like a wound, a ragged tear where 2 universes had touched and failed to properly separate. And through it, Tony could see something. Not his home universe, that connection had long since closed, but something else, something vast and hungry and aware. Anakin, are you seeing this? I feel it. Anakin's voice was strained. Through the Force, it's like a void that goes on forever, empty but not empty, waiting. Yeah, well, we're about to seal that void permanently. Tony increased power to the quantum field, watching the mathematical models adjust in real time. The field expanded, wrapping around the dimensional rift like a membrane, beginning to knit space-time back together. That's when reality screamed. There was no other word for it, a sound that existed on every frequency simultaneously, that bypassed ears and registered directly in the brain. The quantum field stuttered, and through the rift, something tried to push through. J.A.R.V.I.S containment status. Holding, sir, but barely. The rift is resisting closure. There's significant energy output from the other side attempting to keep it open. Something wants the door to stay open. Tony rerouted power, forcing the quantum field to strengthen despite the resistance. Anakin, I need you to do your Force thing. Push back whatever's on the other side. I can't touch it directly. It exists outside the Force. But I can reinforce the boundaries, strengthen the barrier between dimensions. Anakin's presence intensified, and Tony's sensors registered impossible energy signatures as the Jedi poured power into maintaining reality. reality's integrity. The combined effort was working. Slowly, painfully, the rift began to close. Millimeter by millimeter, the quantum field knit space-time back together, cauterizing the wound that Tony's arrival had created. Then the station's alarm shrieked. "Sir, Reactor 3 is experiencing cascade failure. Power coupling integrity at 40% and dropping." Tony's consciousness split across multiple problems simultaneously. Reactor 3 was the weakest link, the one held together by optimism and improvised repairs. If it failed, the quantum field would collapse, and they'd lose their only chance to seal the rift. "Rex, can you stabilize it?" "Negative. The coupling is melting under the power load. We need to reduce output or it's going to explode. If we reduce output, the field collapses." Tony made the calculation in microseconds. "J.A.R.V.I.S, reroute Reactor 3's load to the other 5. Redistribute the quantum frequency across remaining emitters." "Sir, that will overload the other reactors. We'll have perhaps 90 seconds before they begin experiencing the same cascade failure." "Then we seal the rift in 90 seconds. Tony's hands flew across the holographic controls, adjusting power distribution faster than human reflexes should allow. The arc reactor in his chest burned bright, supplementing the station's systems with its own output. "Anakin, I need everything you've got, right now." The Jedi responded with a surge of force energy that Tony could almost see. Reality bending around Anakin's will, pushing against the thing on the other side of the rift. For a moment, Tony glimpsed what the Force truly was. Not mystical nonsense, but fundamental physics operating on principles his universe had never discovered. Anakin wasn't breaking reality's rules. He was using rules Tony didn't know existed. Together, technology and the Force pushed the dimensional rift closed. It resisted. Whatever existed on the other side wanted in desperately, pushing back with enormous pressure. Tony could feel his system straining, the reactors screaming, his arc reactor depleting at dangerous rates. 60 seconds to cascade failure. The rift was 3/4 closed, close enough to prevent entities from crossing, but not enough to fully seal it. Tony needed more power, more time, more everything he didn't have. So he did what he always did, improvised. J.A.R.V.I.S, override all safeties, route arc reactor output directly to the quantum field. "Sir, that will leave you without life support or propulsion. If something goes wrong, it won't matter because we'll be dead anyway. Do it." The arc reactor in his chest flared like a miniature sun. Every erg of power it generated poured into the quantum field, supplementing the failing station reactors. Tony felt the armor around him go dead, felt life support cut out, felt the immediate terror of being in a metal coffin in the vacuum of space. But the quantum field held, strengthened, surged forward with renewed power. The dimensional rift collapsed, not gradually but catastrophically, space-time snapping back into its proper configuration with force that registered on every sensor in the system. The wound closed, sealed, cauterized by quantum fire and force energy, working in impossible harmony. Then Reactor 3 exploded. The blast tore through the station's superstructure, decompressing sections and sending debris hurtling into space. Tony, his armor completely unpowered, tumbled through the void like a piece of wreckage. No repulsors to stabilize, no thrusters to maneuver. Just a man in a dead metal suit, spinning helplessly while his arc reactor desperately tried to reboot systems that had been pushed beyond their limits. "Stark!" Anakin's voice was distant, distorted, Hold on, Tony's consciousness was fading. The arc reactor was rebooting, but too slowly. Life support wouldn't come back online for another 30 seconds, and he'd be dead from oxygen deprivation in 20. Then he felt it. Pressure against his armor, invisible hands grabbing him from across space. Anakin, using the Force to pull Tony toward the evacuation shuttle, defying physics and distance to save a man he couldn't even sense through his mystical energy field. Tony's armor crashed into the shuttle's cargo bay, the door sealing behind him. Artificial atmosphere flooded the space, and his armor's emergency life support finally came online, pumping oxygen into his helmet. He gasped, choking on air that tasted like metal and ozone, alive despite every probability. Did it work? Tony managed after several seconds of just breathing. Tell me it worked. Scan results coming in now, Obi-Wan's voice reported. The dimensional rift is gone, completely sealed. Whatever quantum field you generated, Mr. Stark, it worked. Tony let his head fall back against the shuttle deck, exhaustion rolling over him in waves. J.A.R.V.I.S? Status. Arc reactor at 18% capacity and recharging, sir. All primary systems sustained significant damage but are repairable. And sir, may I say that was the most inadvisable, reckless, and brilliant thing you've ever done, which, given your history, is quite the accomplishment. Thanks, Jay. Love you too. Tony closed his eyes, feeling the shuttle's engines, carrying him away from the damaged station. Anakin, you still there? Present. The Jedi sounded exhausted. I've never felt the Force do something like that before. It was like reality itself was fighting us, trying to stay broken. Reality doesn't like being manipulated. Trust me, I've tried. Tony forced himself to sit up, ignoring his body's protests. But we did it, sealed the rift, eliminated the threat, and only partially destroyed a research station in the process. I'm calling that a win. A costly win, Rex said quietly. He was standing near the shuttle's viewport, looking back at the damaged station. We lost 3 men when Reactor 3 exploded. Good soldiers. The guilt came back, sharp and immediate. More deaths. More people who died because Tony Stark had arrived in their galaxy and brought problems they shouldn't have had to face. I'm sorry, Tony said, meaning it with every fiber of his being. I know that doesn't bring them back, but I'm sorry. Rex turned, his helmet hiding his expression but his body language conveying understanding. General Skywalker says you nearly died sealing that rift, that you shut down your own life support to power the quantum field. The clone trooper nodded slowly. That's the kind of sacrifice the 501st respects. You fought for us, same as we fight for each other. The men who died, they died as soldiers doing their duty. They wouldn't want you carrying guilt over it. Tony wanted to argue, wanted to carry that weight because it felt like the right thing to do. But Rex's words held truth that Tony recognized from years of leading the Avengers. Sometimes soldiers died doing what needed to be done, and honoring their sacrifice meant continuing the mission, not drowning in guilt. Thank you, Tony said simply. The shuttle docked with the Resolute an hour later, and Tony limped out on his own power, armor still partially inoperable, but his body intact. Clone troopers lined the hangar bay, not at attention, but present, watching. As he passed, they saluted. Not the formal military salute, but something else. Right fist over heart, a gesture Tony had seen them use for fallen brothers. They were honoring him, accepting him. Sir, Captain Rex said, falling into step beside him. The 501st would like to extend an invitation. There's a memorial ceremony tonight for the soldiers lost on the station. You should be there." "I'm not military," Tony said. "I don't belong." "You fought beside us, nearly died for us. That makes you one of us." Rex's voice carried absolute certainty. "Sir, with respect, you belong." Tony looked at the clone captain, at the soldiers surrounding him, at Anakin and Obi-Wan watching from across the hangar with small smiles. "All right," Tony said, "I'll be there." That night, in the Resolute's observation deck, Tony stood among clone troopers as they honored their fallen. There were no bodies. The 3 men had been vaporized in the reactor explosion, but their names were spoken, their deeds remembered, their sacrifice acknowledged. 5s who died fighting dimensional entities. Hard Case, Mixer, and Red Eye, who died when Reactor 3 exploded. And as each name was called, the assembled clones responded in unison, "Brother." When the ceremony ended, Anakin approached Tony at the viewport. Together they watched Rishi's sun setting behind the damaged research station, painting the debris field in gold and crimson. "You did good today," Anakin said quietly. "Better than good. You saved this entire sector from a threat the Jedi couldn't even detect. At the cost of 4 lives. In a war, that's a miracle." Anakin's tone carried the weight of too many battles, too many losses. "You can't save everyone, Stark. Believe me, I've tried. The best you can do is make their sacrifice mean something." Tony absorbed that wisdom, knowing it came from hard-won experience. The rift is sealed. The immediate threat is contained. So what happens now? Now? Anakin smiled slightly. "Now you decide what kind of ally you want to be. The Council will push for you to work directly with the Republic military. Chancellor Palpatine will probably want to meet you. He takes personal interest in unique assets. And the Separatists." He gestured to a datapad showing intelligence reports. "Dooku has increased your bounty to 10 million credits. You're officially the most wanted person in the galaxy." "Fantastic. I've always wanted to be famous." Tony accepted the datapad, scrolling through the reports. "What about you? What do you think I should do?" Anakin was silent for a long moment, staring out at the stars. "I think you should remember why you built that armor in the first place. To protect people, to make a difference. This galaxy needs that, Stark. It needs people who can think beyond the Jedi Code, beyond Republic politics, beyond the rigid structures that are losing us this war." "Sounds like you're describing a maverick, someone who doesn't play by the rules." "Sounds like I'm describing you." Anakin turned to face him directly. "And maybe someone like me." Tony heard the undercurrent in those words. Frustration with the Council, with rules that constrained, with a war being fought by people too bound by tradition to adapt. He recognized it because he'd felt the same way 1,000 times working with S.H.I.E.L.D. "Be careful, Skywalker. That kind of thinking gets you labeled a troublemaker." "Good." Anakin's grin was sharp. "Troublemakers are the only ones who change anything." As Anakin left, Tony stood alone at the viewport, watching the stars wheel by in unfamiliar patterns. He'd sealed the dimensional rift, proven his value to the Republic, and earned the respect of soldiers who'd initially viewed him as a dangerous unknown. But he'd also made powerful enemies, drawn the attention of Sith Lords, and become a valuable game piece in a war he was only beginning to understand. "J.A.R.V.I.S," Tony said quietly. "What are the odds we make it home?" "Insufficient data, sir. However, I should note that our chances of survival in this galaxy have improved substantially. You've made allies, demonstrated competence. and proven that Earth technology can coexist with Force-based civilization. So we're not dead yet. Progress? Indeed, sir. Though I should warn you, the encrypted separatist communications I've been monitoring suggest Count Dooku is planning something significant. Multiple fleet movements, resource allocations, and repeated mentions of the armored anomaly. Whatever he's planning, you're at the center of it. Tony's jaw tightened. The game was accelerating, pieces moving toward some confrontation he couldn't yet see. Dooku wanted him captured or killed. The Republic wanted him controlled or utilized. And somewhere in the shadows, a Sith master was pulling strings that affected both sides. Then I guess we'd better be ready, Tony said, because next time Dooku comes calling, I'm not just going to survive. I'm going to show him exactly why you don't mess with Iron Man. The stars burned cold and distant, and in their light, Tony Stark began planning for a war he'd never asked to join, but would fight nonetheless, because that's what heroes did, no matter which galaxy they found themselves in. 3 weeks after sealing the dimensional rift, Tony Stark stood in his private workshop aboard the Resolute, surrounded by the fruits of obsessive engineering. The Mark 51 armor hung suspended in an assembly cradle, its design radically different from anything he'd built before, a hybrid of Earth technology and principles learned from this impossible galaxy. J.A.R.V.I.S final diagnostic on the Kyber integration. The synthetic Kyber matrix is stable, sir. Power output exceeds projections by 17%. And the quantum resonance should allow your weapons to affect force-enhanced targets without depleting the arc reactor as severely as previous engagements. Tony examined the gauntlet's palm repulsor, where a thin lattice of artificially grown Kyber crystal channeled the arc reactor's energy. It had taken weeks of experimentation, countless failures, and more than a few dangerous explosions. But the result was undeniable. His weapons could now touch things that existed partially outside normal reality. Sir, incoming transmission. Priority Alpha from Republic High Command. It's Chancellor Palpatine himself. Tony's instincts pinged warning. He'd successfully avoided direct contact with the Republic's political leadership, preferring to work through military channels in the Jedi Council. But the Chancellor's interest was inevitable. A man with unprecedented technology couldn't stay under the radar forever. Put him through. The holographic projector activated, and a figure materialized, elderly, grandfatherly, with a politician's smile that didn't quite reach calculating eyes. Chancellor Palpatine radiated careful charisma, the kind of studied warmth that Tony recognized from corporate boardrooms and weapons demonstrations. Mr. Stark, at last we meet. I've heard remarkable things about your contributions to the war effort. Chancellor, I'd say it's an honor, but I make it a policy not to lie to heads of state. Tony crossed his arms. What can I do for you? Palpatine's smile widened as if Tony's directness amused him. Straight to business, I appreciate that. The Republic faces its darkest hour, Mr. Stark. The Separatists gain ground daily, and our resources are stretched beyond breaking. Yet you arrive from beyond the stars, bringing technology that single-handedly turned a hopeless battle into victory. I helped. The clone troopers and Jedi won that battle. Humility ill-suits you, I think. The reports are clear. Your intervention was decisive. Palpatine leaned forward slightly. The Senate has authorized me to extend an official offer. Join the Republic military as a special consultant. Full access to our research facilities, unlimited resources, and the opportunity to make a real difference in this conflict. In exchange for what? My armor's specifications? Control over my technology? In exchange for cooperation. The Republic doesn't seek to control you, Mr. Stark. We seek to empower you. Think of what you could accomplish with our resources. Fleets of armored soldiers, weapons that could end this war in months rather than years. And there it was, the hook, baited with promises of power and purpose. Tony had heard similar pitches from S.H.I.E.L.D., from generals who saw the Iron Man armor as the solution to every military problem. He'd refused them all for the same reason he was about to refuse Palpatine. Thanks, but no thanks. I don't build weapons anymore, Chancellor. And I especially don't mass-produce technology that could be turned against innocent people. Palpatine's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Calculation adjusting to unexpected resistance. You fought the Separatists without hesitation. Surely you see them as the threat they represent. I see a civil war where both sides are being manipulated by someone pulling strings from the shadows. Tony watched Palpatine carefully. I've done my research, Chancellor, studied the war's progression, analyzed the strategic patterns. This conflict is too perfectly balanced, too carefully managed to be natural. Someone wants this war to continue, to grind down both sides until they're weak enough to control. A conspiracy theory. Palpatine's tone was dismissive. Mr. Stark, I assure you the Republic's cause is just. I'm sure it is, but justice doesn't require my weapons. Tony gestured to his workshop. I'll keep helping the Republic by building medical technology, improving clone trooper survival rates, and defending against immediate threats. But I'm not becoming your military contractor. Silence stretched between them, Palpatine's hologram perfectly still. When he spoke again, his voice carried a subtle edge, beneath the grandfatherly concern. You're a man of principle, admirable if somewhat naive, but principles won't protect you from Count Dooku, Mr. Stark. He's obsessed with capturing you, and his resources are considerable. Let him try. I've fought worse than a count with a laser sword. Have you? Palpatine's smile returned, colder now. The Sith are more dangerous than you imagine, Mr. Stark. Ancient, patient, and utterly ruthless. They see you as I do, a variable that could tip the balance of power. The difference is that they'll kill you rather than let you remain independent. Then I guess I'll have to stay alive out of spite. Tony killed the transmission before Palpatine could respond, the hologram flickering out abruptly. J.A.R.V.I.S analysis, what did you make of our Chancellor? Calculating, manipulative, and absolutely certain of eventual victory despite the Republic's strategic disadvantages. Either he's delusional, sir, or he knows something that justifies his confidence. File it under problems to investigate when we're not being hunted by cyborg generals and Force wizards. Tony returned to his armor, but his mind was already working the larger puzzle. Palpatine's interest, Dooku's obsession, the Sith pulling strings. It all pointed to something bigger than a simple civil war. The workshop door hissed open without warning. Tony's hand moved toward the armor's emergency activation, relaxing only marginally when he saw Anakin stride in, his expression urgent. We've got a situation. Separatist fleet just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. 3 Providence-class destroyers, support ships, and Dooku's flagship. Let me guess, they're demanding my surrender again? Worse? They're threatening to bombard Rishi Station's remaining facilities unless you meet Dooku in single combat. Neutral ground, no support, just you and him. Anakin's jaw was tight. It's obviously a trap. Obviously, Tony began running calculations, weighing options. But it's also an opportunity. Dooku wants me badly enough to risk himself. That level of obsession creates exploitable weaknesses. You're not seriously considering this. I'm considering everything. That's how you stay alive. Tony pulled up tactical displays showing the Separatist fleet positions. What's Obi-Wan's assessment? That it's suicide and you should ignore the ultimatum. The Republic doesn't negotiate with terrorists, and we certainly don't sacrifice valuable assets to satisfy enemy demands. Good to know I've been upgraded from dangerous unknown to valuable asset in the Council's eyes. Tony studied the fleet disposition, his tactical mind identifying patterns. What about civilian casualties if they bombard Rishi Station? Anakin hesitated. The station is mostly abandoned, but there are still Republic engineers and a small garrison. Maybe 200 personnel total. 200 lives versus 1. The math was simple, but Tony had never been good at simple math when it involves sacrificing people to save himself. I'll meet him, Tony decided. Stark. Not alone and not on his terms. But I'll give Dooku what he wants, a confrontation, just not the one he's expecting. Tony began pulling up fleet coordinates, calculating hyperspace routes, building a plan that was probably insane but might actually work. J.A.R.V.I.S, can we fake a total system failure? Make my armor look dead while keeping emergency power on standby. Certainly, sir, though I question the wisdom of appearing defenseless before a Sith Lord. I'm not appearing defenseless. I'm appearing vulnerable. There's a difference. Tony turned to Anakin. I need your help, and probably Obi-Wan's, and definitely Rex's squadron for extraction, if this goes sideways. When this goes sideways, Anakin corrected, but he was already pulling out his comm. Master, we need to talk about the worst plan Stark's come up with yet. 2 hours later, Tony floated in space between the Republic and Separatist fleets, his armor's external systems completely dark. To any observer, he looked like a corpse in a dead metal coffin, drifting powerlessly in the void. But inside the armor, systems hummed at minimal power. J.A.R.V.I.S monitoring every sensor, every threat, every opportunity. The arc reactor pulsed steadily in his chest, hidden beneath layers of electromagnetic shielding that made it appear offline. Transmission incoming from the invisible hand, J.A.R.V.I.S reported. Count Dooku wishes to speak. Put him through. Dooku's cultured voice filled Tony's helmet. Mr. Stark, how disappointing. I expected the warrior who fought my fleet to greet me with more energy. My reactor's damaged from sealing the dimensional rift. Tony lied smoothly. I can maintain life support and communications, but weapons and flight are offline. If you want to talk, talk. If you want to capture me, you'll have to send a shuttle. Silence on the other end. Dooku calculating, weighing the truth of Tony's words. You surrender remarkably easily for someone with your reputation. I surrender pragmatically. You were going to kill 200 people to get to me. I'm saving their lives by making myself available. That's not weakness, Count. That's basic human decency. How noble. Dooku's tone carried mockery, and utterly foolish. The Jedi have corrupted you with their attachment to worthless lives. In the new order I'm building, such sentimentality will be eliminated. Yeah, every villain thinks they're building a better world. Original. Tony watched his sensors track an approaching shuttle from the invisible hand. So, what's your plan? Torture me for technical specifications? Take apart my armor and reverse engineer the arc reactor? Sell me to the highest bidder? Nothing so crude. I intend to offer you a choice. The shuttle was close now, its docking clamps extending to grab Tony's supposedly helpless armor. Join the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Use your genius to build weapons that will end this war swiftly, or refuse, and watch as I demonstrate what happens to those who waste their potential. The clamps seized Tony's armor, pulling him into the shuttle's cargo bay. Separatist battle droids surrounded him immediately, their weapons trained on his chest reactor. Through the viewport, Tony could see the Republic fleet maintaining position, not attacking despite Anakin's desire to mount a rescue. They were trusting him, following his plan, waiting for his signal. Tony let himself be transported to the invisible hand, carried through corridors filled with battle droids, and into a chamber that could only be described as a throne room. Count Dooku waited there, standing with aristocratic poise, his curved lightsaber hanging from his belt. Beside him stood General Grievous, the cyborg general's mechanical breathing filling the space with menace. "Stark," Grievous rasped, "your armor will make a fine addition to my collection." "You collect armor? That's your thing? Not stamps or antique furniture?" Tony was dropped unceremoniously on the deck, his armor still playing dead. "I've got to say, as hobbies go, that's pretty metal, pun intended." Dooku circled Tony slowly, examining the armor with an expert's eye. Remarkable craftsmanship, technology decades ahead of Republic standards, possibly centuries, and all of it locked inside your mind. Impossible to replicate without your cooperation. That's the idea. I learned my lesson about letting weapons fall into the wrong hands. The wrong hands? Dooku smiled coldly. An interesting phrase from someone aligned with the Republic. Tell me, Mr. Stark, do you know who truly controls the Republic? The Jedi, who claim to serve democracy while wielding absolute power. The Senate corrupted beyond redemption by corporate interests. I know there's a Sith Lord pulling strings on both sides, Tony said bluntly. I know this war is manufactured, designed to weaken both the Republic and your Confederacy until you're easy to control. What I don't know is whether you're the puppet master or just another puppet with delusions of independence. Dooku's expression shifted, surprise, then grudging respect. Perceptive. Most never see the larger game, but you're wrong about one thing. I'm no one's puppet. Everyone's someone's puppet, Count. The strings are just harder to see from your position. Tony watched Grievous move closer, the cyborg's claws flexing with predatory interest. So what happens now? You torture me, I refuse to cooperate, and we all pretend this was worth the effort. Nothing so wasteful. Dooku gestured and the battle droids raised their weapons. I'm going to kill you, Mr. Stark. Quickly and efficiently, because you're right. This war is being orchestrated, and you're a variable that my master cannot account for, cannot predict, cannot control through the Force. Your master, Tony's tactical mind locked onto that admission. So you are just a puppet, taking orders from someone too scared to face me directly. My master fears nothing. Dooku's composure cracked slightly. Lord Sidious has orchestrated a plan centuries in the making. The Jedi will fall, the Republic will be reborn as an empire, and a new order will rise from the ashes. Your presence threatens nothing except the timeline. Lord Sidious. Finally, a name. Tony filed it away, knowing J.A.R.V.I.S was recording everything, knowing that information would be critical later. So kill me then, Tony challenged. Pull out your laser sword and prove how powerful you are. by murdering a defenseless engineer. Dooku's lightsaber ignited, crimson plasma casting bloody light across the throne room. "I'll make it quick. You've earned that much with your courage." He raised the weapon, and Tony's armor exploded with power. The dead systems came online instantly, repulsors firing at point-blank range that sent battle droids flying like toys. Tony's faceplate snapped shut as he rocketed upward, dodging Dooku's strike by centimeters, his shoulder-mounted lasers cutting through the droids with surgical precision. "J.A.R.V.I.S, signal Anakin, execute extraction pattern Delta." "Transmitted, sir, and might I say, your timing was impeccable. 2 more seconds and Count Dooku would have literally cut you in half." Theater requires good timing. Tony's weapon systems armed, targeting both Dooku and Grievous. "Surprise, Count. My armor works fine. Turns out lying to Sith Lords is easier than I expected." Dooku's face twisted with rage. "Treachery." "Strategy," Tony corrected. "You wanted information about who's pulling my strings." "Congratulations. You just gave me information about yours. Lord Sidious, centuries-long plan. The whole conspiracy laid out like a villain's monologue. Thanks for that." General Grievous launched forward with inhuman speed, all 4 arms extending with lightsabers ignited. Blue, green, yellow, and red, stolen from dead Jedi. The cyborg was fast, faster than anything Tony had fought except maybe Quicksilver, his blades moving in patterns designed to overwhelm defenses. But Tony had spent 3 weeks upgrading his armor specifically to fight lightsaber-wielding opponents. His nanotech flowed into shield configurations, hardened surfaces that could deflect plasma blades for crucial microseconds, while his repulsors fired at Grievous's joints, the weak points in the cyborg's construction. One repulsor beam shattered Grievous's left shoulder, the arm falling uselessly. Another struck his knee, staggering the general, but Grievous adapted instantly, his remaining 3 arms compensating, his attack pattern shifting to match Tony's defenses. Behind them, Dooku raised both hands, force lightning crackling between his fingers. "You cannot escape, Stark." The lightning struck and dissipated across Tony's kyber-enhanced shielding. Not completely, not without cost. His HUD flickered and warning indicators lit up. But the synthetic kyber matrix grounded most of the dark side energy, preventing catastrophic system failure. "Upgraded," Tony explained, firing repulsors at Dooku. "Your lightning worked before because I didn't understand the Force technology interaction. Now I do. Thanks for the lesson." The throne room's viewport exploded inward as Republic gunships burst through. Clone troopers rappelling down on cables while Anakin's Jedi interceptor provided covering fire. Rex was first through, dual pistols blazing, his shots coordinated with Tony's weapons to create a killing field that even battle droids couldn't survive. "Extraction team is here, sir," Rex shouted. "Time to go." But Dooku wasn't finished. He moved with force-enhanced speed, positioning himself between Tony and the escape route, his lightsaber carving through the air in Form 2 precision that was beautiful and deadly. Anakin met him mid-strike, blue blade clashing against red in a shower of sparks. "Go!" Anakin ordered. "I'll hold him." "Not a chance." Tony fired everything he had at Dooku, repulsors, lasers, micro-missiles, forcing the Sith Lord to divide his attention between Anakin's lightsaber and Tony's overwhelming firepower. It was too much. Even for a Sith Lord fighting 2 opponents who attacked from completely different combat philosophies proved impossible to counter. Dooku fell back, force pushing debris between himself and his attackers, retreating toward a secondary exit. "This isn't over, Stark." Dooku's voice promised future violence. "My master will see you destroyed. You cannot hide from the Sith." Not hiding, just winning. Tony grabbed Anakin and fired his repulsors, launching them both toward the waiting gunship. "Rex, blow the charges!" Explosives Tony had secretly placed during his helpless prisoner act detonated throughout the throne room, tearing through critical systems and causing the invisible hand to shudder. Not enough to destroy the ship, but enough to cripple it for hours. The gunship's doors sealed as Tony and Anakin tumbled inside, clone troopers providing covering fire as they peeled away from the Separatist flagship. Around them, the Republic fleet had engaged, turning the space battle into controlled chaos designed to cover their escape. That, Anakin said, breathing hard, was the most reckless, insane, brilliant plan I've ever seen. "Thanks, I specialize in reckless insanity." Tony collapsed against the bulkhead, his systems running diagnostics on the damage sustained. Significant but repairable. He'd live. "Did J.A.R.V.I.S get everything?" "Every word, sir. Lord Sidious, the manipulation of both sides, the plan to convert the Republic into an empire. It's all recorded." "Good, because we just turned this war from a military conflict into an information war." Tony looked at Anakin. Dooku admitted everything. His master's name, the conspiracy, the end game. That's intelligence the Jedi Council needs, immediately. They'll never believe it came from a Sith Lord's confession. They'll believe it came from me. Tony met Anakin's eyes. "I'm the variable that can't be sensed through the Force, remember? The one element Sidious can't predict or control, which makes me the most dangerous person in this galaxy to his plans." The gunship docked with the Resolute, and Tony stepped into the hangar bay to find clone troopers celebrating the impossible rescue. Rex approached with a grin visible even through his helmet. "Sir, that was the most insane extraction I've ever participated in. The 501st is officially convinced you're either brilliant or suicidal." "Why not both?" Tony retracted his faceplate, grinning despite exhaustion. "We won, Rex. Got intelligence that might actually end this war, rescued 200 personnel from bombardment, and I didn't die. I'm calling that a perfect mission." "Your definition of perfect needs work, sir." Maybe, but as Tony stood in that hangar bay, surrounded by soldiers who'd risked everything to rescue him, who'd followed his insane plan because they trusted him, he felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving in this galaxy. Hope. The war wasn't over. Dooku would regroup, Sidious would adapt his plans, and the conspiracy would continue its deadly work. But now they had information. Now they had proof. Now they had a weapon the Sith couldn't account for. A man immune to the Force, armed with technology this galaxy had never imagined, and stubborn enough to keep fighting no matter the odds. "J.A.R.V.I.S," Tony said quietly as technicians began examining his damaged armor. "Calculate probability of success. Can we actually win this war?" "Insufficient data, sir. However, I should note that every victory improves our position. Every battle survived teaches us more about this galaxy's rules, and every alliance strengthened makes us more dangerous to our enemies." "So you're saying we've got a chance?" "I'm saying, sir, that Iron Man has changed the equation, and equations, once changed, can never return to their original state." Tony smiled. In a galaxy bound by the Force, ruled by ancient powers and mystical energy, One man with an arc reactor and enough attitude to challenge gods had just proven something fundamental. Technology could fight destiny, engineering could challenge prophecy, and sometimes the greatest power wasn't mystical energy or ancient knowledge. It was a human mind refusing to accept impossible as an answer. The war had changed. The Sith had been exposed, and Tony Stark was just getting started.